Chapter 1845. The Snow Domain Sword Technique couldn't do anything to Chu Mu. With a flash of sword light, Helian Shui executed an even stronger sword technique. It was also the true legacy sword technique of Sin Yen City, Freezing Snow Magic Light Sword. In terms of grade, the Freezing Snow Magic Light Sword had reached the peak of the inherited level. It was comparable to the Silver Sword technique. The Freezing Snow Sword Intent, Freezing Snow Spirit Sword, and Freezing Snow Magic Light Sword were all connected, causing its power to reach an astonishing level. Once the sword technique was executed, Chu Mu immediately felt the temperature in the air drop rapidly. The snow domain that covered his body was even more powerful and affected his body. The pure yang energy circulated and his blood seemed to boil. His entire body seemed to have transformed into a furnace, emitting intense heat waves that fought against the low temperature of the outside world. Large amounts of water vapor appeared and filled the surroundings, tumbling and blocking one's vision. In the thick white fog, rays of sword light were incomparably cold. They swept across and filled Chu Mu's eyes. There was a kind of brilliance that interfered with Chu Mu's vision, making it harder for him to capture and judge. The essence of the Freezing Snow Magic Light Sword was the coldness and the dazzling demonic sword light. After a long time, it could even affect one's mind. One's mind would become dazed, and one's reaction would be slower than usual. Helian Shui changed to an even stronger sword technique. Chu Mu still executed the 13 meteor strikes and the moon slashing art. The stars and moon shone continuously, fighting to resonate with each other. Until now, Chu Mu still hadn't integrated the heart and sword as one into the cloud-piercing sword technique and the Dao cutter sword technique. Although the 13 meteor strikes and the moon slashing art were springboards that greatly reduced the difficulty, it wasn't easy to completely integrate the heart and sword as one into the two powerful sword technique. If it had originally taken tens or even hundreds of years, it would have taken at least a few years now. Now, it had only been a little more than a year or two. To a sword saint, the strength of the sword technique was also an important factor. It had a great impact. If Chu Mu executed the cloud-piercing sword style or the Dao-severing sword style, the attack power would naturally increase greatly. However, the heart and sword as one would not be able to be used. In terms of combat ability, it would drop by a level. No matter how powerful the attack was, if it couldn't hit the enemy, it would be like a decoration. Especially for a monstrous genius like Helian Shui. After Chu Mu's continuous efforts, the heart and sword as one could now cover a range of 6 meters. Everything within 6 meters seemed to be under Chu Mu's control, becoming extremely clear and unique. Even the trajectory of everything became clear and visible. The demonic sword light of the frigid snow devil light sword had indeed affected Chu Mu's vision to a great extent. It made it difficult for him to see clearly, and he didn't even dare to look at it for too long. This was because if he looked at it for too long it would affect his state of mind. He would slowly become absent-minded, and it would make it hard for him to concentrate. His reaction would be slower than usual, and it would affect the performance of his strength. In the end, he would be suppressed. Chu Mu wasn't omnipotent. He was just a little more talented. However, since ancient times, there had been countless monstrous geniuses. There were also many powerful and mysterious sword techniques that had been created. Every sword technique that had been passed down from generation to generation had its own unique and mysterious points that made it impossible for others to go against them directly. If one couldn't go against them directly, then one would have to avoid facing them head-on. Chu Mu closed his eyes. To him, who was a sword master, there wasn't much difference whether he used his eyes or not. To a certain extent, if he closed his eyes, he would be able to make more accurate judgments. This was especially so when he was in the state of the heart and sword as one. After closing his eyes, Chu Mu discovered to his surprise that the frigid snow devil light sword that Helian Shui had used could not only affect one's vision, it could even affect one's perception to a certain extent. If Chu Mu had used the power of his spirit to cover it, he would have also felt the endless and dazzling sword light that was filled with magic. However, the heart and sword as one that Chu Mu had used was a type of power that originated from one's spirit. It was a type of power that could only be grasped after one had comprehended the heart and sword as one realm of the heart and sword as one. It was an extremely mysterious and obscure power that couldn't be described with words. The person who had created the frigid snow devil light sword clearly hadn't reached the level of comprehending the heart and sword as one. Therefore, the frigid snow devil light sword hadn't reached the level where it could affect the heart and sword as one. Chu Mu sensed the streaks of demonic sword light one after another. Their trajectories and changes were all within 6 meters of him. The two swords connected and attacked continuously. Shooting stars broke through the sky and the bright moon rose and fell. The stars and the moon reflected each other's brilliance. Within the dense white fog, they collided and intersected with the demonic sword light. In the distance, the Yin-Yang elders and the life-reaping seven blades all had solemn expressions. Their pupils contracted and their gazes tightened. Radiance flickered continuously. They also didn't dare to stare at the demonic sword light for too long. Otherwise, their minds would be affected and their gazes would become sluggish. They knew that the demonic sword light was the manifestation of their young master's strongest sword technique, the frigid snow devil light sword. Every sword was dangerous, and every sword was fatal. The ordinary moves of the frigid snow devil light sword still couldn't do anything to Chu Mu. A blue light flashed in Helian Shui's eyes. It was filled with ice crystal-like light rays that spread out. The frigid snow spiritual sword paused for a moment, and all the demonic sword light also paused at that moment. It was as if the void was frozen. Frigid snow descends. As Helian Shui shouted in a low voice, a chilly sensation quickly spread out from his body. The demonic sword energy instantly shattered and turned into countless snowflakes. Each snowflake emitted a chilly sensation that could easily freeze the blood of peak dark star sword saints, slow down the circulation of blood, and stiffen the muscles of ordinary bright moon sword saint. Each snowflake flashed with a terrifying luster. It was like a metallic luster. It was as if each snowflake was formed from the tip of a sword. As the snowflakes swept out, they pierced out along the spiritual sword in Helian Shui's hand, and all of them attacked Chu Mu. The flying snowflakes blocked one's vision and severely interfered with the power of the divine soul. Even the state of the heart and sword as one was slightly affected. Chu Mu instantly knew that the master who created the frigid snow devil light sword was very close to understanding the essence of the heart and sword as one. Demonic light massacre. With another low roar, Helian Shui consecutively used the second sword. Following the first sword's chilling snow sky, the terrifying demonic sword light was highly concentrated and condensed into one. In an instant, it pierced through the past and present, pierced through the river of time, pierced through the barrier of the void, and stabbed towards Chu Mu. Fast, it was really too fast. In the blink of an eye, it was already in front of him. That kind of speed was beyond comprehension. Even though Chu Mu could control the heart and sword as one, he still felt that his thoughts could not keep up with his reactions. The heart and sword as one was not invincible. Its power was limited by Chu Mu's own abilities. When the speed of the sword approached or even surpassed the speed of Chu Mu's thoughts, the magical effect of the heart and sword as one was greatly reduced. Helian Shui was indeed worthy of being the second most powerful person in Sin Yen City. The power of his sword technique was extremely shocking. This demonic light massacre had reached the peak of its murderous intent and power. Chu Mu instantly understood that if he was hit, he would definitely be severely injured and lose the ability to fight. His subconscious that had been tempered thousands of times came into play once again. Relying on the trajectory of the heart and sword as a pair of demonic light massacre, Chu Mu raised his sword and executed the lone peak exists forever. It was like a lonely mountain that stood tall on the earth, unmoving for thousands of years. The tyrannical demonic sword light directly hit the lone peak exists forever. Under that terrifying sword light, the lonely mountain started to shatter and collapse. The demonic sword light paused for a moment, then pierced through the lone peak exists forever and attacked Chu Mu's chest. It pierced through, but it was only an afterimage. Although the lone peak exists forever was not able to defend against it, it bought Chu Mu a chance to survive. He counterattacked with a slash of his sword. The waning moon released a bright white light that shone down. Every snowflake that was shockingly cold reflected a fluorescent light. The coldness seemed to have intensified, and the dissipating demonic sword light seemed to have solidified, becoming still in an instant. The demonic light massacre's power was shocking, but after it was executed, there would inevitably be a moment of delay. In Chu Mu's eyes, that was a kind of flaw. He seized the opportunity to execute the waning moon, causing the space-time around him to be affected in an instant. 15. The sword seemed to have descended from the sky, summoning the shadow of a shooting star. It locked onto Helian Shui and bombarded him. Helian Shui immediately felt his hair stand on end. He felt as if his entire body was about to be pierced through and his bones shattered. It made his hair stand on end. This momentary pause was grasped by Chu Mu. How could he react so easily? The 15th sword light of the 13 meteors' strikes landed, causing the void to tremble. In the distance, the faces of the Yin-Yang elders, Life reaping 7 blades, and the others changed drastically. They had never imagined that their young master would fall into such a dangerous situation. However, distant water could not put out a nearby fire, and they were completely unable to save him in time. The shooting star fell, directly hitting Helian Shui's back. Chu Mu did not show any mercy in this sword strike, just like how Helian Shui's demonic light massacre was also merciless. With a bang, when the falling shooting star hit Helian Shui's back, a snow-white hexagon suddenly appeared and blocked it. That snow-white hexagon slowly rotated, forcibly blocking the strongest attack of the 13 meteors' strike. Helian Shui was not injured at all. Cold snow heart, enter my body. With a low shout, Helian Shui quickly turned around and drew his sword light. The demonic sword light unceasingly attacked Chu Mu. At the same time, the snow-white hexagon shrank, turning into the shape of a heart and entering Helian Shui's body. His aura began to rise, becoming stronger and stronger, and the surrounding coldness multiplied. Helian Shui's long black hair fluttered without wind. From the roots of his hair, a snow-white color spread out. In the blink of an eye, his long black hair turned snow-white. His eyebrows also turned snow-white. In the depths of his eyes, a snow-white light spread out, causing his eyes to look even more strange. The coldness was astonishing. Just a glance from him made one feel as if all the blood in one's body would freeze. Chapter 1846. The frigid snow heart was a secret treasure and also a secret technique. When merged with one's body, it could greatly increase one's strength. As the frigid snow heart entered his body, Helian Shui Yi's aura continued to rise. His entire body turned snow-white, and he looked like a god of snow. The aura he emitted was 10 times stronger than before. After using the frigid snow heart, Helian Shui Yi, who was already at the peak of the bright moon realm, broke through the limit of the bright moon realm and reached the bright sun realm. Coldness spread in all directions, and white cold air spread out, enveloping the surroundings. The air seemed to have frozen. You should be proud that you forced me to use the first stage of the frigid snow heart. Helian Shui Yi's voice sounded, but it was completely different from before. It was as if there was no emotion in his voice. It was a kind of absolute calmness. Not necessarily, Chu Mu said indifferently. A layer of exquisite full-body armor covered his body. Silver God armor, Demon Fighter armor, activate. Helian Shui Yi started to take out his trump card, and Chu Mu also took out his trump card. Helian Shui Yi waved his frigid snow spirit sword. In an instant, the sword pierced through the void and appeared in front of Chu Mu. This was not the frigid Snow Devil Light Sword, but the Snow Domain Sword technique. Helian Shui used the Snow Domain Sword technique again, but this time, the power of the Snow Domain Sword technique was more than 10 times stronger. It was even more terrifying, and the execution speed was faster. In the blink of an eye, the entire Snow Domain Sword technique was executed. Snow Domain. Descend. Helian Shui shouted without any emotion. A shocking coldness gushed out from his body and combined with the Snow Domain Sword technique, causing the Snow Domain to change rapidly. It changed from the Snow Domain Sword technique to the real Snow Domain. The Snow Domain covered everything within a 100-meter radius. Chu Mu was also in the middle. Everything within 100 meters turned white. It was like a scene after a night of heavy snow. Helian Shui stood in the middle of it. His entire body was snow white, and it seemed as if he had merged with the whiteness within 100 meters. As the snow region formed, Chu Mu sensed a powerful force suppressing his body. A shocking coldness constantly invaded his body from the snow region. A portion of it was blocked by the silver armor, but a portion of it penetrated the armor and invaded his body, freezing his blood and muscles. Pure yang. His blood and qi vibrated, and pure yang energy flowed through his body, resisting the extreme cold. Sword Domain. In the void, a sword light appeared in Chu Mu's body and flashed in his eyes. He released his sword domain, and it gradually expanded in the snowy region. Everywhere the sword domain passed, the white light disappeared. The white hexagons in Helian Shui's eyes spun. The snow domain seemed to be strengthened, suppressing Chu Mu's sword domain. At the same time, Chu Mu's sword domain was resisting the snow domain, trying to expand. The two different domains instantly clashed. Both sides stood still as the snow region and the sword region clashed. The formless energy ripples caused everyone to tremble. Where the two different domains clashed, there were formless ripples that tore the space apart. Gradually, the snow region retreated. No matter how Helian Shui exerted his strength, it was useless. Chu Mu's sword domain expanded bit by bit, forcing the snow region back. Helian Shui's snow domain was, in the end, a portion of it was a pseudo-domain created by the snow domain sword technique combined with the frigid snow heart's power to create a true domain. However, it wasn't a domain created by Helian Shui himself. However, Chu Mu's sword domain was different. His sword domain was created from his extremely high sword technique realm and his shocking comprehension ability. It was a domain that he completely controlled. Moreover, it had been a long time since Chu Mu had comprehended sword domain. As his sword technique attainments and realm continued to increase, as his cultivation continued to increase, the might of sword domain also increased. Today, sword domain could easily affect normal peak 9th star saint rank. Although Helian Shui's snow region was powerful under various conditions, it was still inferior to Chu Mu's sword domain. Helian Shui mobilized another wave of power from the freezing snow heart and merged it with the snow region, further increasing its power and resisting the impact of the sword domain. Helian Shui's expression gradually turned serious. As if he realized that the power of his opponent's sword domain was greater than his snow region, Helian Shui immediately shrank his snow region to reduce the consumption of power and increase his own strength. The sword domain expanded and surrounded Helian Shui. It continuously attacked the snow region from all directions. However, after the snow region shrank, it became even stronger and harder to attack. Helian Shui unleashed the freezing snow devil light sword. The sword light, which was filled with a demonic nature, slashed out. A portion of the snow region's power was merged into the sword, causing the freezing snow devil light sword's power to increase by a lot. It directly split apart a portion of the sword domain and appeared before Chu Mu. After Helian Shui merged the freezing snow heart with the freezing snow heart, the freezing snow devil light sword's power had increased by more than 10 times. Now that it had merged with a portion of the snow region's power, its power was even more terrifying than before. Although Chu Mu's sword domain was very strong and could not be completely broken apart by his opponent's sword technique, within the sword domain, Helian Shui, who had the protection of the snow region, would not be suppressed by the sword domain, which would weaken his power and speed. The freezing snow devil light sword, whose power had increased by more than 10 times, was able to break apart a portion of the sword domain's power and attack Chu Mu. Sword God's Descent. The power of the secret technique hidden within his body was activated. It flowed throughout his body and into the two swords, increasing their sharpness by more than 10 times. After more than 100 days in Sin Yen City, a small portion of the power of the Sword God's Descent secret technique had recovered. It was enough for Chu Mu to use for a short period of time. 13 Meteor Strikes, Moon Severing Art, Lone Peak Sword Technique. Using the two swords, Chu Mu skillfully executed all kinds of sword technique. They complemented each other and increased their power. When facing an opponent like Helian Shui, if one did not have a strong enough sword technique, it would become a hindrance. This was also one of Chu Mu's current weaknesses. The might of Helian Shui Yi's freezing snow devil light sword exceeded Chu Mu's expectations. Even with the sword domain's amplification of his strength and speed, causing his strength to increase a step further, Chu Mu still felt immense pressure when facing the freezing snow devil light sword. This freezing snow devil light sword contained a unique and powerful power. It was this power that increased the power of the freezing snow devil light sword to a point where it was difficult for him to resist. This is the power that belongs to the snow region. Chu Mu thought to himself, fusing a portion of the power of the snow region into the sword technique will increase the power of the sword technique by several times. Since this is the case, can I fuse a portion of the power of the sword domain into the sword technique? In the past, Chu Mu had never thought about this. After all, even though he had outstanding talent, he had always groped his way forward on the path of cultivation. He had never had the guidance of a senior expert. However, a monstrous genius like Helian Shui was different. He had a complete inheritance. He only needed to cultivate according to the complete inheritance and combine it with his outstanding talent to comprehend something that belonged to him from the inheritance. This was like two people running at a very fast speed towards the same unfamiliar place. One of them had a map to guide him, but he only knew how to not go in the wrong direction. On the other hand, the other person did not have a map and could only grope his way forward. The difference was very obvious. Chu Mu was the person who did not have a map. Furthermore, his cultivation involved many parts, but it did not form a complete system. There was not much connection between them. Under the circumstances of limited time and energy, he could only focus on one part and improve the other parts. It was precisely because of the limited time and energy that Chu Mu did not put much effort into the sword domain. Now that he saw Helian Shui fusing a portion of the power of the snow region into the sword technique, increasing the power of the sword technique and also allowing the sword technique to have a trace of the characteristics of the snow region, he had a flash of inspiration. He thought of fusing his own sword domain into the sword technique. In an instant, Chu Mu stopped the secret technique of Sword God's Descent. The power of the secret technique had not recovered much and could not be maintained for long. Now, he had to experience his opponent's sword technique during the battle. He had to understand how his opponent unleashed the power of the snow region and how to fuse it into the sword technique. This would definitely take a long time. Under the effect of stopping the secret technique of Sword God's Descent, Chu Mu felt even more pressure. The demonic sword light almost suffocated him. He could not even fully grasp the heart and sword as one. He was in a dangerous situation. He contracted the sword domain, allowing it to cover a radius of 6 meters. It combined with the coverage of the heart and sword as one. With the two complementing each other, his senses were further enhanced and the pressure was greatly reduced. He continued to defend, using his two swords to block Helian Shui's attack. The frigid snow demonic light sword was fully displayed under Helian Shui's frigid snow spirit sword. Its profoundness was fully displayed. Any sword was enough to injure a sword saint at the pinnacle of the bright moon realm. Every time Chu Mu blocked it, he would feel a powerful impact that shook his palm and arm. Then, an extreme coldness would invade and collide with his pure yang blood. Before it could cancel out, the power of the snow region would invade Chu Mu's arm along with the extreme coldness, forming a domain-like power that would repel the pure yang blood as much as possible and weaken the effects of the pure yang blood. Young Master is indeed the strongest. That's right. No one can compare to Young Master. This Chu Mu is indeed very strong. It's not unjust that we lost. However, once Young Master uses his true strength, it's enough to crush him. The life-reaping Seven Blades and the Yin-Yang Elders saw that Chu Mu was suppressed and Helian Shui had the upper hand. It seemed like he was about to defeat and kill Chu Mu. They were all very excited. Little did they know that Chu Mu was secretly learning from them. It was true that he lacked the guidance of seniors. However, he had the advantage of learning and absorbing the strengths of his opponents in battle. Therefore, every battle with a strong opponent was a kind of training for Chu Mu. It was an opportunity for him to improve himself. Gradually, Chu Mu began to understand during the battle. Chapter 1847. The strength of a late-stage, 7th-grade sage body was continuously displayed. The frigid snow demon-light sword in the snow domain was extremely powerful. Even though Chu Mu blocked it, the cold and demonic energy continued to enter Chu Mu's body. Under the repulsion of the domain, the resistance of Chu Mu's pure yang blood was greatly weakened. Although he had suffered some injuries, they were nothing to a late-stage 7th-grade sage body that could regenerate broken limbs. He quickly recovered. The feeling of being injured was even more direct and clear. Chu Mu gradually grasped how to integrate the snow domain into his sword technique. Similarly, he could use the same method to integrate his sword domain into his sword technique. No, it should be integrated into his sword. Integrating sword techniques and integrating sword techniques were two different concepts. Chu Mu's train of thought was instantly clear. All sorts of inspiration gushed out of his mind. Integrating the sword domain into sword techniques could only be done by integrating one sword technique at a time. However, integrating the sword domain into the sword meant using the sword to execute sword technique. The power of the sword would naturally be integrated into the various sword technique. The comparison between the two was like the difference between treating the symptoms and treating the root of the problem. Of course, treating the root of the problem was obviously more advanced and more difficult. However, if he did not do it, he would do it to the best of his ability. This had always been Chu Mu's goal. For this reason, Chu Mu even temporarily gave up on using the 13 meteor strikes and the moon's severing art. Instead, he used the two swords to execute the basic sword technique. The basic sword techniques were the foundation. They were the true representation of a sword technique. The power of the basic sword techniques was naturally far from being comparable to the 13 meteor strikes and the moon's severing art. Hence, Chu Mu was under greater pressure. The frigid snow demon light sword, which had been integrated with the power of the snow domain, sent a terrifying cold and demonic energy into Chu Mu's arms. It shattered the resistance of his pure yang blood and invaded his body, causing wanton destruction. The origin of the wood aspect in his heart continued to beat with his heart, releasing waves of dense vitality. Combined with the self-healing ability of Chu Mu's late-stage 7th-grade sage body, it rapidly healed the injuries in his body. Helian Shui Yi's expression didn't change in the slightest. His heart was completely calm, as if nothing in the outside world could cause his emotions to fluctuate. This was a manifestation of the frigid snow heart entering his body. In this state, he could make better judgment. The Yin-Yang Elders, Death Reaper 7 Blades, and the others who were watching were incomparably shocked. They had originally thought that their young master, who had brought out his full strength, would be able to defeat and kill his opponent in a short period of time. Unexpectedly, as time passed, his opponent was still tenaciously resisting. He seemed to be on the verge of collapse, as if he would be killed by the next sword strike, but he stubbornly held on. More time passed, and Chu Mu's body was injured again and again. Those injuries caused Chu Mu to experience more and more. Under Chu Mu's efforts, a trace of the sword domain's power was finally channeled into the two swords in his hands. Even though it was only a trace, and the increase in the power of the swords was very limited, it still made Chu Mu happy, because this was an extremely good start. Next, it's time to grind, Chu Mu thought to himself. He continuously struck out with his swords, using basic sword techniques to block and counterattack as much as possible. At the same time, he infused traces of the sword domain's power into the two swords, continuously familiarizing himself with it. After another 7 minutes, Chu Mu decided to end this battle. The 13 meteor strikes and moon-severing art were executed once again. An extremely small portion of the sword domain's power was infused into the two swords, increasing the power of the 13 meteor strikes and moon-severing art. Even though only a small portion of the sword domain's power had been infused into the two swords, Chu Mu's sword domain's power was enough to double the power of the two swords. Such an increase in power was still not comparable to the frigid snow devil light sword's amplification by several times in Helian Shui Yi's snow domain. Sword God's Descent activate. The secret technique power that had been hidden in his body that had not recovered much was directly activated and infused into the two swords, causing the sharpness of the two swords to increase by 10 times. This instant change from weak to strong was fully grasped by Chu Mu, breaking Helian Shui Yi's rhythm. Waning Moon 15. After infusing a trace of the sword domain's power, the power of these two moves increased by several times, becoming even more tyrannical. Under the waning moon, a faint white light shone down, imprisoning an area of space and time. As it fused with the sword domain, the effect was actually enhanced slightly. Helian Shui Yi and his sword stopped moving at that instant. Helian Shui Yi, whose emotions had not changed since the beginning, trembled and contracted at this instant. The incomparably bright sword light was like a meteor that descended from the heavens. It carried an extremely terrifying power as it descended, bombarding Helian Shui Yi. The instant the sword light descended, Helian Shui Yi finally broke free from the shackles of the waning moon's power. He executed the frigid snow devil light sword. The frigid snow spirit sword turned into a demonic light, highly condensed, and slashed towards the meteor. Demonic Light Massacre. After colliding with the Sword Light Massacre, 15, which was enhanced by various powers, was not much weaker than the Demonic Light Massacre in terms of sword skill level. Amidst the terrifying explosion, the shock waves spread out, bombarding the snow domain and the sword domain. Amidst the chaotic power, Chu Mu closed in on Helian Shui Yi, unleashing an extremely swift and violent attack with his two swords. The sword light was endless. In an instant it suppressed Helian Shui Yi directly. The Silver God equipment increased his overall strength. The Demon Fighter Vambrace increased his arm strength and speed, the Sword Domain increased his strength and speed, and the Sword God's Descent increased his sharpness. There was even a trace of golden light. It was very small, but it was like the tip of the sharpest sword. It jumped and emitted a frightening sharpness. That was the power of the essence of metal, the sharp metal spirit. That's right. Ever since Chu Mu obtained the sharp metal spirit in the secret realm of the 5 spirit race, he had never used it. This was because when he obtained the sharp metal spirit, its power was greatly damaged and needed to recover. After many years of recovery, although the sharp metal spirit had not fully recovered, it was not as weak as before. Occasionally, it could use a bit of its power. With the support of the sharp metal spirit, Chu Mu's two swords became even sharper and sharper. The cold snow spirit sword was shattered by Chu Mu's exquisite swordsmanship. The terrifying sword broke through the sturdy snow domain and attacked Helion Shui, tearing his long robe. In a situation where absolute power could not suppress the sword, Chu Mu's swordsmanship was even more exquisite than Helion Shui's. Young master! The Yin-Yang elders, Life Reaping Seven Blades, and the others exclaimed. They were extremely shocked. It was hard to imagine that the situation of the battle would be reversed. However, they could not interfere in such a battle. Under Chu Mu's two swords, the sturdy snow domain was instantly broken into pieces. It was difficult for it to take shape. 14. Moonfall. Stars and moon intertwined. Catoptric deflection. It was as if the world was constructed from a mirror. It reflected everything. This feeling made Helion Shui dazed for a moment. In this moment of daze, Chu Mu took advantage of it and executed Waning Moon, Space-Time Imprisonment, and the 15th attack, Meteor Descent. Helion Shui burst forth with all his strength and broke free from the shackles. He tried his best to defend. The tyrannical power shattered the broken snow domain around him, and shattered the sword light on the cold snow spirit sword, sending him flying. However, Chu Mu didn't hesitate at all. He chased after Helion Shui and slashed with both swords. Stop! The Yin-Yang elders and Life Reaping Seven Blades charged over without a care for anything. They attacked Chu Mu with all their strength and tried to save Helion Shui. Helion Shui was at a complete disadvantage and was being beaten up. Scram! Chu Mu crossed his two swords and slashed out. The cross-shaped sword light spread out. The terrifying power not only shattered the sword light of the Yin-Yang elders, Life Reaping Seven Blades, and the others, but also sent them flying. All of them flew back and vomited blood. With this attack, they realized how terrifying Chu Mu's strength was. It was unknown how many times stronger he was than them. Stop! In just one breath, Helion Shui also obtained the time to breathe. He quickly retreated and opened up the distance between them. He quickly said to Chu Mu, who was chasing after him again, "You win. The ancient Saint Blood Lotus pellet is yours." Not enough, Chu Mu said and continued to attack Helion Shui. He looked like he would not stop until he killed Helion Shui. "I am willing to pay other prices," Helion Shui said. This sentence made his heart tremble. A feeling of humiliation surged up. All along, it was only others who said this to him. Now it was he who said this to others. With a flash, Chu Mu stopped in front of Helion Shui. His eyes were as sharp as swords. "What price?" "A piece of heavenly origin soul essence," Helion Shui quickly said. He did not want to die because he had a bright future ahead of him. "Heavenly origin soul essence," Chu Mu repeated. "That's right. A piece of heavenly origin soul essence is enough for your cultivation to break through to the 9 heavens of eternity," Helion Shui said. "Compared to your life, a piece of heavenly origin soul essence is not enough," Chu Mu said. "Then what do you want?" Helion Shui's expression did not change, but anger surged in his heart. "The essence of the power of heaven and earth, the 5 elements and 8 phases," Chu Mu said without hesitation. "Who asked Helion Shui to take away his ancient Saint Blood Lotus pellet? Who asked Helion Shui not to be his opponent? Who asked Helion Shui to voluntarily pay the price?" "I only have a piece of Wind Soul Essence," Helion Shui said. "As the young lord of Sin Yen City, is this all you have?" Chu Mu asked. Helion Shui did not answer. He kept staring at Chu Mu. "Give it to me," Chu Mu said. Helion Shui took out 2 bottles of ancient Saint Blood Lotus pellets, a piece of Heavenly Origin Soul Essence and a piece of Wind Soul Essence, and handed them to Chu Mu. Chu Mu quickly put them away. "I don't mind if you continue to find trouble with me. However, next time, prepare more essence of the power of heaven and earth." Chu Mu quickly retreated, turning into a stream of light. In an instant, he left the young lord residence and went far away. Chu Mu had his own considerations as to why he did not kill Helian Shui. In general, there was no enmity between him and Helian Shui. Now that he had taken back the ancient Saint Blood Lotus Pellet and obtained the Heavenly Origin Soul Essence and the Wind Soul Essence, the Yin-Yang Elders and the Life-Reaping Seven Blades were all severely injured, and Helian Shui had paid a corresponding price. Moreover, if he killed Helian Shui, he would definitely be hunted down by the city lord of Sin Yen City. Chu Mu believed that he could not withstand being hunted down by a veteran bright young sword saint. Chapter 1848. Child, some people are like dragons in the ninth heaven. If you can't keep up with them, you can only look up to them. Tang Tianhao said to Tang Qianxue, sighing softly. He couldn't help but feel some regret in his heart. I understand, Grandpa. Tang Qianxue nodded forcefully. Even so, tears had already blurred her eyes. A kind of good feeling that gradually turned into love was buried deep in her heart, and it was being commemorated. Wiping away the tears in her eyes, Tang Qianxue's gaze became firm and sharp, as if she had made up her mind. After leaving the young lord's residence, Chu Mu didn't return to the manor. Instead, he quickly left Sin City and headed towards the northern part of Sin City. That was the direction towards the 5 great cities. Apart from a few people, no one else knew about the battle in the young lord's residence. Even if they knew, they didn't dare to spread the news. Therefore, no one knew that the second strongest person in Sin City, the strongest and most talented person in the younger generation of Sin City, young Lord Helian Shui, had been defeated. It was a direct confrontation. He was defeated by a genius of the younger generation. In the end, he had no choice but to use a treasure to redeem his life. Although others didn't know, it didn't mean that it didn't happen. Being defeated by Chu Mu's sword was a great blow to Helian Shui. Up until now, his life had been smooth sailing. His strength had been constantly increasing. No one could be his opponent. Even the experts of the older generation had been defeated by him. Losing a battle and using a treasure to redeem his life made Helian Shui feel humiliated. It was a great humiliation. However, he didn't want to die, so he could only do that. After falling into a depression for a while, Helian Shui thought it through and understood. He pulled himself together. His entire being was refreshed. It was as if he had been reborn from the ashes of a raging fire. When I truly have the strength of the Bright Yang realm, I will definitely go to the 5 great cities to find you. Then we will fight again. Helian Shui stared into the distance and said to himself. Then, he began to cultivate in seclusion. A few days later, Chu Mu walked out of Sin Yen City and arrived outside the city without slowing down. Right now, Chu Mu's strength was at the peak of the Bright Moon Realm, and his speed was also at the peak of the Bright Moon Realm. If he wanted to return to the 5 cities at this speed, he would need less than 4 years. Perhaps 3 years would be enough. However, Chu Mu chose to use the shuttle instead. The speed of the premium flying shuttle was extremely fast, and it could reach the speed of an ordinary 9-star saint. Although it was not as fast as a bright moon saint running on the ground, the difference was not too big. Of course, Chu Mu wanted to hurry back to the 5 great cities as soon as possible. Logically speaking, he should have chosen to rely on his own speed to advance. However, he had obtained the ancient Saint Blood Lotus Pill and the Heaven Origin Soul Essence from Helian Shui. He planned to refine the Heaven Origin Soul Essence first to raise his own cultivation. Taking a flying shuttle was the best choice for him to travel and improve his cultivation at the same time. As he steered the shuttle forward, Chu Mu held the Heaven Origin Soul Essence tightly in his hand and circulated the Divine Wilderness Sword technique to absorb the pure origin energy within the Heaven Origin Soul Essence. This piece of Heaven Origin Soul Essence was about the size of a baby's fist. It was milky white and extremely sturdy. Even the full force attack of a peak 9-star saint would not be able to damage it. Holding it in his hand, Chu Mu could feel the rich and powerful origin energy ripples contained within it. It was an extremely pure origin energy ripple, and its quality was extremely high. In fact, the heaven origin soul essence was a kind of essence of the origin energy of heaven and earth. It was similar to the essence of the power of heaven and earth. For example, the flame soul essence, the wind soul essence, and the like were only slightly inferior in value. Every piece of heaven origin soul essence was formed from extremely pure origin energy of heaven and earth after a long period of time. As such, the heaven origin soul essence did not have any impurities. Its quality was at least as pure as the origin energy of a peak 9-star saint. Now that Chu-Mu was at the peak of the 8th heaven of the Wangu realm, he could directly absorb it and convert it into the divine wilderness sword essence without spending much effort to refine it. To Chu-Mu, who did not need to comprehend the realms, he only needed to accumulate enough origin energy to rapidly raise his cultivation level and make a breakthrough. From the peak of the 8th heaven of the Wangu realm to the beginning of the 9th heaven of the Wangu realm, one needed to accumulate a large amount of origin energy. It was even more than the total amount of origin energy needed to advance from the beginning of the 8th heaven of the Wangu realm to the peak of the 8th heaven of the Wangu realm. Normally, even with the Dragon Yuan pill's continuous absorption and conversion of origin energy, it would still take close to 10 years. But now, Chu-Mu only needed to completely absorb the heaven origin soul essence in his hand, and his cultivation level would successfully advance from the peak of the 8th heaven of the Wangu realm to the beginning of the 9th heaven of the Wangu realm. Once his cultivation level had advanced, his strength would be greatly enhanced. At that time, he would be able to break through the limit of the bright moon realm and reach the bright sun realm. A bright sun sword saint was the strongest person in the land of exile, second only to the 7 kings. Of course, Chu-Mu's goal was not to become a bright sun sword saint. His goal was to have the strength to fight against a peerless expert. Based on the current situation, when his cultivation level reached the peak of the 9th heaven of the Wangu realm and his sage body reached the peak of the 9th grade, it would not be impossible for him to have the strength to fight against a peerless expert. Just the thought of fighting against a peerless expert as a sage was enough to excite anyone. The heaven origin soul essence was extremely sturdy, so it was not easy to absorb the pure origin energy within it. Even though Chu-Mu was at the peak of the 8th heaven of the Wangu realm, his tyrannical divine wilderness sword origin could only absorb it bit by bit. It was extremely stubborn. If it was an ordinary peak 8th heaven of the Wangu realm, he would not be able to absorb it at all. Based on this speed, it will take at least a year to finish absorbing it. Chu-Mu thought to himself. Using a year's time to advance to the beginning of the 9th heaven of the Wangu realm was also very cost-effective. It was much better than using nearly 10 years to break through. Extremely pure origin energy was absorbed from the heaven origin soul essence and poured into Chu-Mu's body. It was quickly converted into divine wilderness sword origin, increasing the amount of divine wilderness sword origin. As for the ancient sacred blood lotus elixir, there were a total of 20 elixirs in the 2 bottles. Under the current circumstances, he could not consume them. He could only temporarily stop cultivating his sage body and wait until the heaven origin soul essence was completely absorbed before considering consuming the ancient sacred blood lotus elixir. Outside Sin City, there was a barren and dry land. This was also the land of exile. Hence, the climate and topography were similar to the 5 great cities. However, perhaps because it was at the edge of the land of exile, the changes in climate were more frequent and intense. Nighttime had arrived and it was a suitable time for the sinners to move about. Chu-Mu had no intention of stopping the flying shuttle and continued to move forward. The speed of the flying shuttle was very fast and its defense was amazing. Even a silver sinner would find it difficult to break through. Under the extremely fast speed of the flying shuttle, once it hit a sinner, even a silver rank sinner would be injured, let alone a bronze or black iron rank sinner. The sinner would be instantly torn apart. To the current Chu-Mu, Even a silver heart couldn't arouse his interest, unless there was a large amount. The number of silver hearts in Chu Mu's spatial ring was in the thousands, so they were of no use. The nighttime period could not stop Chu Mu from moving forward. It was the same for the frozen period. Chu Mu continued to move forward, and the heaven origin soul essence was constantly being refined by him. In the absence of gold sinners, Chu Mu's journey was unimpeded. In the blink of an eye, half a year had passed. Chu Mu was already far away from Sin City, but he was still very far away from the 5 great cities. The further away he was from Sin City, the fewer people there were. After all, the cultivators who left Sin City had a relatively fixed range of activity. Those who dared to leave Sin City were usually very powerful and had sufficient confidence in themselves. There were not many such cultivators. After half a year, the heaven origin soul essence in Chu Mu's hand had shrunk quite a bit. It was obvious that he had absorbed it. His divine wilderness sword essence had also reached the peak of the 8th firmament of the immemorial realm. Next, he had to continuously accumulate yuan qi. Once he had enough, he would break through in one go. Outside the flying shuttle, the scorching sun hung high in the sky, shining countless rays of light. The rays of light were like swords that sprinkled down on the ground, causing the air to be scorching hot. On the vast and barren land, there was not a single person in sight. There was only a flying shuttle that was constantly moving forward. Maintaining the flying shuttle for half a year was obviously not an easy task. It consumed a lot of energy. Fortunately, the flying shuttle used the sinner's heart as its energy source. All he needed to do was throw the bronze-rank sinner's heart into the shuttle's furnace. Once the sinner's heart was melted, the energy contained within would be released to supply the shuttle's energy consumption as a driving force. The flying shuttle's furnace could only melt a bronze sinner's heart at most. It couldn't do anything to a silver sinner's heart. Otherwise, it would be much simpler. Right now, in the 5 great cities, something incomparably shocking was happening. However, Chu Mu, who was very far away, didn't know. Only when he returned would he know. Of course, even if he knew now, it wouldn't be of much use. Time flew by day. The heaven origin soul essence in his hand was getting smaller and smaller. The entire heaven origin soul essence was formed by the pure yuan qi of heaven and earth. When it was absorbed, its volume would shrink. In the end, the entire heaven origin soul essence would completely disappear, leaving no impurities behind. In the 9th month after Chu Mu left Sin Yen City, an incomparably powerful aura suddenly exploded from a black flying shuttle. It was like a storm that spread outwards. Very quickly, the aura quickly retracted. Finally, I've broken through. Inside the flying shuttle, Chu Mu exhaled. His expression was calm. The breakthrough this time was even calmer than before. The divine wilderness sword essence at the initial stage of the 9 heavens of Aeon flowed quietly in his meridians. There was still a small portion of the heaven origin soul essence in his hand. It was enough for him to stabilize his cultivation after the breakthrough. Chapter 1849. Brother, leave quickly. I will stop him. No, brother. Let's join hands and kill him. Leave quickly, shouted the senior brother anxiously. Blue veins popped out on his forehead. He pushed the junior brother in front of him with his left hand. His strength instantly exploded and pushed his junior brother back dozens of meters. Then, he quickly turned around. The sword in his right hand exploded with an incomparably shocking light. It was like a thunderbolt streaking across the sky. It pierced towards the strong enemy who was chasing after him. This was his strongest sword attack. It was the most tyrannical attack that he could unleash with all his strength. The sword light was like a thunderbolt. It cut across the sky. Ha 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 ha, you are all going to die. Don't even think about escaping. A savage and strange laughter resounded. The strong enemy was approaching. Facing the incomparably tyrannical thunderbolt sword light, he didn't have the slightest intention of dodging. The sword light in his hand slashed out. It was incomparably ferocious. cut through a mountain. With one sword attack, the opponent's thunderbolt sword light was destroyed. The incomparably tyrannical sword light was incomparably ferocious. It was unstoppable. After destroying the sword light, it directly hit the opponent's body. With a boom, the opponent's body was destroyed. Immediately after, the person stretched out his hand and grabbed the yuan spirit that was about to disperse. He directly threw it into his mouth and devoured it. How delicious! While absorbing the yuan spirit, he said in a joyful voice, "Brother." Seeing his own brother being chopped into pieces by the sword, the junior brother's teeth were about to split apart. He was filled with grief and indignation. "Don't shout. Very soon I will send you on your way. I will let you catch up with your brother as soon as possible. Then you won't be lonely on the road to hell." The strange voice resounded again. It was like the laughter of a demon. Step by step, it was like the god of death was approaching. It made the junior brother angry, hateful and fearful. His mind was about to collapse. "Monster, you monster!" The junior brother kept retreating. His legs were trembling. He couldn't gather much strength, let alone turn around and run away. In fact, under such circumstances, he couldn't run away even if he wanted to. This monster and his accomplices had wantonly slaughtered their entire sect. A portion of the disciples who had escaped had also been hunted down and killed. Every time they were killed, their primordial spirits would be captured and eaten. After eating their primordial spirits, those monsters would become even stronger. Along the way, his fellow disciples tried their best to escape, leaving behind seeds and inheritances for the sect. However, they were pursued and killed one by one. Now, he was the only one left. Perhaps he was the last person of his sect. The immense pressure and terror assaulted his heart. Seeing no hope made him lose his will to fight. The sound of the monster's footsteps entered his ears. It was as if each step was stepping on his heart, causing him to almost suffocate. His pupils trembled incessantly. Clearly, this monster was also enjoying the feeling of pushing people step by step into despair. At this moment, a figure came from afar at an extremely fast speed, attracting the monster's attention. Its ferocious eyes quickly looked over and locked onto the figure. It was a flying shuttle. The flying shuttle quickly approached. Then, as if it had sensed their presence, it quickly stopped. The junior brother, who had almost lost his will, came back to his senses. When he saw the flying shuttle, it was as if he had seen hope. He instantly exploded with all his strength, transforming it into speed, and appeared beside the flying shuttle. The door of the flying shuttle opened and a person walked out. "Ha ha ha ha, another one has come. It seems that my luck today is not bad." A hideous laugh sounded. It seemed that the person who had come down from the flying shuttle was also prey. This person was Chu Mu, who had rushed back to the 5 cities from Sin City. His aura was completely restrained. Those whose cultivation was not as high as his would not be able to sense his cultivation level at all. When he had set off from Sin City, he had taken the flying shuttle. As he flew, he had cultivated and improved his strength. Along the way, he had encountered a crack in the void that had lasted for 3 months. Chu Mu had no choice but to stop. Even though he had stopped, he did not stop cultivating. Instead, as he focused on cultivating, his progress was even more obvious. In addition to the crack in the void, he had also encountered a destructive storm. That terrifying destructive storm was several times more terrifying than the crack in the void. It destroyed everything in sight. That kind of power made Chu Mu's heart tremble. With his strength, if he had been slightly affected, he would have been destroyed on the spot. There was no way he would have survived. The destructive storm lasted for nearly a month before it passed. Chu Mu continued forward. It had taken him more than 5 years to reach this place. He felt that he should have entered the territory of the 5 cities. However, Chu Mu was not very clear. When he saw a figure, he stopped the flying shuttle and wanted to ask about it. Now, it seemed that the situation was not right. The person with the fierce eyes who seemed to see him as prey looked like a human, but there was a big difference between him and a human. His body was more than 2 meters tall, but he did not look thick at all. He did not look like a person who was like an iron tower, nor did he look like a thin bamboo pole. His body shape was just right. He was not wearing a robe, but a leather armor made of some kind of leather. It looked very tough, and it just happened to set off his figure. He was very vigorous, and it was obvious that his speed and explosive power were extraordinary. The skin exposed outside of the leather armor was covered with strange green lines, as if it contained some kind of mysterious power. The person's eyes were cold and fierce, and the color of his pupils was dark red. He held a sword in his right hand, and it did not look special. However, his left hand was longer and thicker, as if it was made of large tendons. His nails were stretched out, and they were incomparably sharp, like claws. His appearance was human, but he was not human. It was very strange. Chu-Mu was sure that he had never seen or heard of such an existence in the land of exile. Could it be that he was going in the wrong direction? Was he not returning to the territory of the 5 cities, but to an unfamiliar territory? Is this the territory of the 5 cities? Chu-Mu asked the person who ran in front of him directly. His calm tone seemed to have a unique power, and it immediately calmed the junior brother who had almost lost his will. Yes, this is the territory of the 5 cities. The junior brother quickly replied. Who is he? Chu-Mu frowned slightly and pointed to the guy who looked like a human not far away, and asked without hesitation. He is a disciple of the Sword Demon sect. The person quickly replied. Sword Demon sect? Chu-Mu was even more surprised. He remembered that when he left the 5 cities, there did not seem to be such a sect. The Sword Demon sect is a sect that has risen in recent years. Seeing the surprise in Chu-Mu's eyes, the junior brother quickly explained. In his opinion, Chu-Mu was their savior. Are you guys done talking? If not, let's go on our way together. We can talk about it later. The Sword Demon sect disciple chuckled. Although it sounded like he was laughing, his eyes were cold and fierce, without the slightest trace of a smile. As soon as he finished speaking, the Sword Demon sect disciple exploded with shocking speed. Like a bolt of lightning, an incomparably sharp roar sounded, and the tyrannical air flow was like a blade cutting the ground, leaving a straight mark. In an instant, the Sword Demon sect disciple appeared in front of Chu-Mu. The sword in his right hand exploded with a shocking light, and he slashed down without mercy. Dodge! The junior brother's face changed greatly, and he quickly shouted. Chu-Mu's expression did not change, and his body did not move at all, as if he was scared stiff. In fact, Chu-Mu was not scared, but this kind of attack was not in his eyes at all. The Sword Demon sect disciple's cultivation was at the late stage of the 7th sky of Wangu, and it seemed like he had just broken through. The power of the sword light was extremely tyrannical, much stronger than an ordinary 7-star saint. Even an ordinary peak 7-star saint would not be able to deal with it easily. To Chu-Mu, the difference between the two was too big, and the difference between the two was indescribable. The Sword Demon sect disciple's face was ferocious, and his eyes shone with a bloodthirsty light. In the next breath, he would be able to chop off Huang Xiaolong's head and devour his primordial spirit. Suddenly, an indescribable pain spread from his heart. He could feel his heart exploding in an instant, and an incomparably terrifying energy shot out from his heart like countless sharp swords. It pierced through his body, and even his primordial spirit was destroyed in an instant. His body was sent flying, and he landed dozens of meters away. He began to shrink, and in the blink of an eye, he returned to the appearance of an ordinary person. This piqued Chu-Mu's interest. "What's going on?" asked Chu-Mu. The junior brother who survived the chase had a dazed expression on his face. He was incomparably shocked, and he couldn't react in time. It couldn't be helped, the scene in front of him was too shocking. This sword demon sect disciple had chased them all the way, and all of them were killed one by one. In the end, he was the only one left. But now, that ferocious and powerful sword demon sect disciple had turned into a corpse. The contrast was too great. After a while, he came back to his senses. He realized that the person beside him was an existence stronger than the sword demon sect disciple. He couldn't afford to be careless. "Senior, that's demonic transformation." The person hurriedly replied. "The sword demon sect's disciples can demonic transform, and after that, their strength will increase significantly, and they will be able to defeat opponents who are stronger than them. Once they are killed, their demonic transformation will be removed, and they will return to normal." "What's the origin of the sword demon sect? Tell me." Chumu nodded and said, "Yes, Senior." The person's attitude was very respectful. One had to know that his talent was not bad, but he was only a mid-level 6-star saint. Compared to the sword demon sect's disciple who was killed, there was a huge gap. But that sword demon sect's disciple who was undefeatable in his eyes died in an instant. This showed that this person's strength was many times stronger than the sword demon sect's disciple. Compared to himself, this person was many times stronger. Calling him senior was a matter of course. Chapter 1850. This person's name was Nanziyu, and he was a disciple of a small force, the Thunder Light sect. The Thunder Light sect was a sect with only a few hundred people, including the sect master, elders, and disciples. The strongest person in the sect was merely an 8-star saint. Not long ago, a group of disciples from the Sword Demon sect had killed their way into the Thunder Light sect. They were merciless and killed in a frenzy. Even the most powerful sect master of the Thunder Light sect was easily killed. His primordial spirit was taken out and eaten. Most of the hundreds of disciples died. A small number escaped with the mission of passing down the Thunder Light sect's legacy. However, they were still hunted down and died one by one. If Nanziyu had not met Chu Mu, he would have died. The Sword Demon sect was a sect that had risen 4 years ago. In the land of exile, the decline of a sect and the rise of a new sect was very normal and would not attract much attention. However, after the Sword Demon sect appeared, it grew rapidly at a shocking speed. They went on expeditions everywhere. First, they attacked the free sword cultivators, then they slowly moved on to some small families and finally small forces. Now, after a short 4 years of development, the Sword Demon sect had become a terrifying existence second only to the 5 city lord mansions. There were 2 reasons why the Sword Demon sect had developed so quickly. First, the disciples of the Sword Demon sect could demonize and increase their strength significantly. Moreover, they could also increase their cultivation by devouring primordial spirit. Second, the sect master of the Sword Demon sect was a terrifying expert. With him in charge, the Sword Demon sect was an existence that many major forces did not dare to provoke. Listening to Nanziyu's words, Chu Mu was quite surprised. He did not expect that in the short 4 years that he had been away, the 5 cities would have such a huge change. "What is the name of the Sword Demon sect's sect master?" Chu Mu asked subconsciously. "Feng Wui," Nanziyu replied. This answer caused Chu Mu to be shocked. Feng Wui was the reclusive genius who had been killed by him in the ominous demon secret domain. Later, when Chu Mu saw him outside the ominous demon secret domain, he felt that Feng Wui was a little strange. However, because of some things, Chu Mu did not investigate further. After that, he lost track of Feng Wui. Who would have thought that after being chased by the ancient blade, Feng Wui would be able to make a name for himself in the past few years? He had even built a huge foundation for himself, becoming a very famous expert in the 5 great cities. Feng Wui is indeed strange. Chu Mu thought to himself, resurrection from the dead, Sword Demon sect, demonification, devouring the primordial spirit to increase my strength. Suddenly, A flash of inspiration appeared in his mind. Chu Mu had vaguely grasped something as it flashed by. Could it be that the resurrected Feng Wui is? Chu Mu's eyes flashed with astonishment. This kind of speculation made him feel incomparably shocked. After thinking about it, he felt that the possibility was very low. However, apart from this possibility, there seemed to be no other explanation. Senior, Feng Wui challenged the 6 great stars a year ago. He defeated them one by one with a clear advantage, and won the title of Awakening Sword Star. He was known as the #1 expert of the younger generation and the strongest person under the 7 kings. Nanziyu's tone was very emotional. There was a kind of reverence for the strong and a kind of hatred for the enemy. His talent is incomparably shocking and his strength is incomparably strong. Almost all of his opponents were killed by him and their primordial spirits were absorbed by him. He transformed them into his strength and continued to improve. Apart from the 6 great stars, maybe he is worried about the 7 kings. Chu Mu listened quietly. Whether Feng Wui was the original Feng Wui or the Feng Wui that Chu Mu had guessed, as long as he had enough wisdom, he would be afraid of the 7 kings. The 6 great stars were the inheritors of the 7 kings. Once Feng Wui killed them, what awaited him was the fury of the 7 kings, unless Feng Wui had the strength to contend against the 7 kings. Could it be that the Sword Demon sect has not been besieged? Asked Chu Mu. Devouring primordial spirits to increase one's strength was an incomparably evil method. There was no lack of foresight among the cultivators. They should have known that if the Sword Demon sect continued to develop, it would be a disaster. The 7 kings must have sensed that something was wrong with Feng Wui and would not sit idly by. Yes, there was a siege once, but the Sword Demon sect's Awakening Sword Star, Feng Wui, was too strong. With his own strength, he slaughtered more than half of the cultivators who participated in the siege. After the disciples of the Sword Demon sect transform into demons, they become even stronger and can recover their injuries and increase their strength by devouring primordial spirit. Therefore, in that siege, the Sword Demon sect suffered a great loss. Only Feng Wui and a few of the stronger elders were left. The other forces who participated in the siege also suffered heavy losses. A large number of their cultivators died. Nanziyu's tone was quick as he continued, I thought that the Sword Demon sect would decline from then on. Who would have thought that in just a year's time, they would become strong again? Without the leadership of the 5 great cities, there is no way for them to organize a second siege. There is also no news from the 7 kings. This damned Sword Demon sect, they act arrogantly, devouring primordial spirits everywhere. I really hope that the 7 kings will appear and annihilate them all. Nanziyu's voice was filled with anger. How far is this place from the 5 great cities? Asked Chu Mu, changing the topic. Although he was now in the territory of the 5 great cities, he had no idea where exactly he was. Perhaps he had just entered the territory of the 5 great cities. There was no clear mark on the shuttle's map. Senior, go down this way and you will reach Qingsha City. Nanziyu said, pointing in a direction. What about you? What are your plans? Asked Chu Mu. Since he met Nanziyu here, saved him, and asked him for relevant information, Chu Mu decided to be kind and help him a little. However, it all depended on Nanziyu's choice. Nanziyu was startled. Soon after, he seemed to be talking to himself. I might be the last person alive from the Thunderlight sect. I carry the last hope of the Thunderlight sect. I want to rebuild the Thunderlight sect. I want to go to Zhanlong City. Are you going to Bloodbath City with me, or? Chu Mu heard Nanziyu's words clearly. However, he didn't say anything and asked again. Senior, I will go to Zhanlong City with you. Nanziyu hurriedly said. Although he was filled with hatred, he did not lose his rationality. He was very clear that with his strength of a 6-star saint, it would be very difficult for him to survive in the wilderness, let alone rebuild the Thunder Light sect. He had to survive first, then raise his cultivation and strength before rebuilding the Thunder Light sect. Without a doubt, his choice was correct, but at the same time, this choice was incomparably difficult. Even if the Thunder Light sect was only a small sect in the past, and the strongest person was only an 8-star saint, it would be extremely difficult for Nan Ziyu to rebuild it with his talent. Perhaps he wouldn't be able to do it in his lifetime. But no matter what, with such a goal, he would be more motivated. Chu Mu saw all of Nan Ziyu's reactions and felt some admiration in his heart. Only a person who was filled with hatred but was not dominated by hatred and understood his own shortcomings would be able to succeed. Go and keep the spatial ring, Chu Mu said. Nan Ziyu hastily took off the Sword Demon Sect disciple's spatial ring and was about to give it to Chu Mu. After Chu Mu checked it, the items inside didn't change at all, so he threw the spatial ring to Nan Ziyu. Many thanks, Senior. Nan Ziyu received the spatial ring and didn't decline. Instead, he bowed gratefully. Entering the flying shuttle, Chu Mu continued forward with Nan Ziyu and Nan Ziyu. The 5 cities revolved around the Dark God Great Sword. As long as they went in the direction of Qingxie City, they could also go to Blood Slaughter City. Sure enough, after flying for a period of time, the map on the flying shuttle began to show the location of the 5 cities. Chu Mu immediately changed his direction and quickly headed towards Zhanlong City. The purpose of going to Zhanlong City was very simple. The evil dragon palace was there. That's right, the first thing Chu Mu wanted to do after returning to the 5 cities was to find Gu Xingdao for revenge. Everything else would be put aside for the time being. In the flying shuttle, Chu Mu drove while asking Nan Ziyu about the situation of the 5 cities in the past few years. Other than the Sword Demon Sect, other things happened in the 5 cities. They talked about all kinds of things. Nan Ziyu told them everything he knew. It seemed to be different from before. For example, there weren't many people who knew about the 3 major battle powers before. At least, disciples of small sects like Nan Ziyu wouldn't know about it. But now, he knew. The reason for this was Chu Mu's battle against the evil dragon palace back then, where he shone brilliantly. After that, the 6 stars displayed astonishing strength that far surpassed the peak of the 9-star saint rank. Finally, the 3 fighting strength ranks were popularized and more cultivators knew about them. One could imagine how big of an impact the 3 major battle powers had on ordinary cultivators. It was very shocking. Even now, there were still some cultivators who found it hard to accept. It turned out that there were 3 powerful existences above the peak of the 9-star saint realm. Unparalleled Sword Star Chu Mu is the most pitiful. His talent is extremely high, even above the other 6 stars. If he was still alive, he might be able to compete with Shocking Sword Star Fengwui. Nan Ziyu said. Little did he know that the person in front of him was the pitiful Chu Mu. Of course, Chu Mu didn't say his name. You know Chu Mu very well? Chu Mu asked. The feeling of talking about himself with someone else was very strange. I heard about it. I haven't seen him with my own eyes. If only I had half of his talent, no, 1/10 of it, then rebuilding the Thunder Light sect wouldn't be so difficult. Nan Ziyu's face flashed with envy. Chu Mu smiled and didn't say anything. He asked about the evil dragon palace again. Ever since the evil dragon palace's palace master Gu Xingdao killed Chu Mu, the evil dragon palace was sealed. Nan Ziyu said, maybe it's to recover their strength. Chapter 1851. 5 years ago, because of the evil dragon palace, the 5 great cities had issued a ban, forbidding Chu Mu from entering the 5 great cities. Otherwise, it would be considered a provocation to the 5 great cities. However, after the news of Chu Mu's death spread, the ban was naturally lifted. The flying shuttle stopped outside the Zhanlong city. Chu Mu and Nan Ziyu alighted from the shuttle. All right, we'll part ways here, Chu Mu said to Nan Ziyu. Then, he took out a jade pendant and handed it to Nan Ziyu. I hope you can rebuild the Thunderlight sect in the future. This jade pendant was the dragon-swallowing jade pendant. Originally, the dragon-swallowing jade pendant could display the cultivation speed of a peak 6-star saint rank. However, after Chu Mu's cultivation constantly increased, the dragon-swallowing jade pendant was also affected fundamentally. Its cultivation speed broke through and reached the initial stage of 7-star saint rank. To Chu Mu, the dragon-swallowing jade pendant was of no use. He originally planned to give it to his little maid Lin Biru. However, with other pills, the dragon-swallowing jade pendant's effects weren't that great. It was useless to keep it, so he might as well give it to Nan Ziyu. After spending some time together on the shuttle, Chu Mu admired Nan Ziyu. Especially after experiencing the destruction of the Thunderlight sect and the pursuit of the Sword Demon sect's disciples, his will didn't crumble under the pursuit. Now that he had recovered, he was even more resolute. "Senior, I still don't know how to address you." Nan Ziyu held the dragon-swallowing jade pendant and instinctively felt that the jade pendant was extraordinary. However, he didn't study it in detail. Instead, he asked Chu Mu's departing figure. Chu Mu. These two words directly rang in his mind, causing Nan Ziyu's body to tremble. An indescribable excitement emerged from the depths of his heart and rushed through his body. Even his soul was trembling. Chu Mu. These two words, this name, not long ago, he, Nan Ziyu, had mentioned it again and again. He didn't expect that he would be saved by the idol in his heart, and even ride the same shuttle to Zhanlong City. Chu Mu quickly walked into Zhanlong City. Although some people felt that he looked familiar, after the news of his death 5 years ago spread and was accepted by others, those who knew Chu Mu felt that Chu Mu was already dead. Thus, they didn't associate him with him, and only felt that they might have seen him somewhere. Only those who were familiar with Chu Mu would be able to recognize him after seeing him. Thus, Chu Mu easily entered Zhanlong City without any obstruction. Entering Zhanlong City is the first step, entering the Evil Dragon Hall is the second step. Chu Mu's eyes flashed. The 5 great cities all had relevant rules that prohibited fighting within the cities. However, those forces that had a foothold within the 5 great cities were not within the scope of this rule. After all, this rule was to protect the people and property within the 5 great cities. As long as the fighting within each force didn't affect the outside world and affect other people and property, it wouldn't be under the jurisdiction of the 5 great cities. Of course, even if the 5 great cities didn't care, the other forces would also care. Chu Mu asked a little and immediately knew the direction of the Evil Dragon Hall. He quickly walked over. After the Evil Dragon Hall was sealed, no outsiders entered and no disciples went out. Under the seal, it was almost equivalent to cutting off contact with the outside world. This kind of method could protect the Evil Dragon Hall to a certain extent and also allow the Evil Dragon Hall to recover its strength in a shorter period of time. Because the appearance of the Sword Demon sect made Gu Yingdao feel a great sense of danger. Chu Mu arrived outside the Evil Dragon Hall. The entire Evil Dragon Hall was enveloped by the Great Palace ceiling formation, emitting a shocking aura. Chu Mu's eyes focused as he stared at the Great Palace ceiling formation. He could see traces of movement within it. Those were the movements of energy, filled with tyrannical power. To be able to be used as the Great Palace ceiling formation, it was naturally a very profound and powerful formation. In fact, the Great Palace ceiling formation of the Evil Dragon Hall was also a defensive formation used by the Evil Dragon Hall. It was called the Great 8 Extreme Evil Dragon Formation. It was currently in an activated state, but if it wasn't attacked, it wouldn't display its power. Chu Mu carefully observed and used his own ability and method to break the formation. His expression gradually became serious. After a while, Chu Mu was sure that the Great Palace ceiling formation of the Evil Dragon Hall couldn't be broken so easily. At least, with his current attainments in the way of breaking formations, it was still difficult to do so. Of course, if Chu Mu was willing to spend more time to slowly research, he might be able to improve until he could break the Great Palace ceiling formation in front of him. However, it would take at least a few years. Looks like I can only use brute force to break it, Chu Mu thought to himself. It wasn't that easy to break the formation using the way of breaking formations. However, it wasn't difficult for Chu Mu to break it with brute force. His current strength was many times stronger than when he was in Sin Yen City. Without even taking out his sword, Chu Mu stretched out his left hand. His index and middle fingers joined together like a sword. A sharp sword light flowed, making his fingers seem like real swords, filled with astonishing sharpness. The sword light was sharp and unfathomable. It directly slashed at the great octopole evil dragon formation. Immediately, it was attacked by a powerful external force. The great octopole evil dragon formation was fully activated. Its power was activated, and the vicious roars of evil dragons resounded continuously. The phantoms of 8 evil dragons condensed and appeared in the formation. They constantly swam about, releasing astonishing power. Instantly, the power of Chu Mu's sword light was blocked by the 8 evil dragons. The 8 evil dragons also counterattacked. 8 beams of light shot out from their mouths, piercing through the void and shooting towards Chu Mu. Each beam of light had the power of a bright moon sword saint. In other words, the great octopole evil dragon formation could easily block the attack of a bright moon sword saint without breaking. It could even counterattack and kill a bright moon sword saint. However, Chu Mu wasn't a bright moon sword saint. With a slash of his sword light, the attacks of the 8 evil dragons were directly neutralized by him. Immediately afterward, Chu Mu pointed his sword light again. It was like a sharp sword piercing through the sky, piercing through all obstacles. The power of this attack had exceeded the limit of the bright moon sword saint and reached the level of the bright sun sword saint. The tyrannical sword light completely exceeded the limit of what the great octopole evil dragon formation could withstand. Under this sword light, the 8 evil dragons let out mournful roars. Their bodies were directly pierced through like candied haws. Amidst the mournful roars, the 8 evil dragons continued to struggle and twist. Under the sword light of Chu Mu's sword light, they were defeated. The 8 evil dragons were the foundation of the great octopole evil dragon formation. Once they were defeated, the entire formation would be affected. The power of the formation would be weakened by at least 70 to 80%. A bright moon sword formation, after being weakened by 70 to 80%, could at most reach the level of a dark star formation. Chu Mu pointed his finger again. The great octopole evil dragon formation, which only had 20 to 30% of its power left, couldn't resist at all. Under Chu Mu's sword light, it shattered and disappeared into nothingness. The evil dragon hall that was sealed by the formation also appeared before Chu Mu's eyes. "Evil Dragon Hall, I'm coming," Chu Mu said softly. Everyone in the Evil Dragon Hall felt the destruction of the formation. Thus, when Chu Mu saw the disciples and elders of the Evil Dragon Hall, as well as the first Hall Master of the Evil Dragon Hall, Gu Xingdao, who he had to kill. At this moment, Gu Xingdao's eyes were wide open as he stared at Chu Mu in shock. Of course, he recognized Chu Mu. It was also because he recognized Chu Mu that he was so shocked. Hadn't he already killed Chu Mu? 5 years ago, when he had paid the price of the evil dragon sword, he had been sucked into the terrifying spatial crack and completely devoured. That kind of power was something that even the 7 kings couldn't deal with. However, Chu Mu had actually survived. Just how astonishing was his luck! After 5 years, Chu Mu, who had survived the spatial crack, might have become even stronger. No, even if he survived the spatial crack, he would have suffered great injuries. The current him is at most a little stronger than before, Gu Xingdao thought to himself. Soon after, he roared, "Chu Mu, I can kill you once, and I can kill you a second time." As soon as his voice fell, a murderous intent filled the air. Gu Xingdao held his sword and turned into a blood-red sword light. In an instant, he crossed thousands of meters and slashed fiercely. After 5 years, Gu Xingdao's strength had also increased by quite a bit. Together with the sword in his hand, this attack was close to the limit of the Bright Moon realm. Compared to 5 years ago, it was even stronger. If Chu Mu's strength hadn't increased by much this time, he would definitely die. However, the current Chu Mu's strength couldn't be compared to before. It was unknown how many times stronger he had become. The incomparably sharp and tyrannical blood-red sword light rushed towards Chu Mu. Chu Mu didn't use his sword. He only stretched out 2 fingers and gently pinched. The shockingly tyrannical sword light directly froze in midair and then dissipated, revealing Gu Xingdao's body and his sword. How is this possible? Gu Xingdao's expression changed drastically. His eyes bulged, and there was an indescribable shock in his heart. How was this possible? Chu Mu actually used 2 fingers to pinch his full-powered sword, and didn't move at all. Your strength. Your strength. Gu Xingdao was horrified. The elders and disciples of the evil dragon palace were also extremely shocked. Their Lord Palace Master, the strongest person in their hearts, actually had his sword caught by the other party. He used his fingers to catch the sword, as if he didn't have any strength to resist. Today, the evil dragon hall will be destroyed, Chu Mu said softly. His 2 fingers trembled slightly, and an incomparably terrifying power instantly passed through Gu Xingdao's blood-red longsword. It directly entered Gu Xingdao's palm, spreading to his arm, and then to his body. It instantly shook and destroyed. Gu Xingdao hurriedly used all of his strength to resist and expel the power. However, the difference in strength between the 2 sides was too obvious. It was completely futile. Under the impact of Chu Mu's power, his body continuously shattered and his internal organs ruptured. Blood continuously spurted out from Gu Xingdao's mouth, mixed with fragments of his internal organs. Cracks began to appear on Gu Xingdao's bones. Chapter 1852. Blood continuously flowed from his body. Gu Xingdao was horrified. He wanted to let go, but he was bound by a power and could not move. He could only endure Chu Mu's power. His internal organs were all shattered, his bones shattered, and his tendons snapped. With a light flick of his finger, Gu Xingdao's body and words flew back at an extremely fast speed, crashing into the group of evil Dragon Hall disciples. A terrifying power exploded from Gu Xingdao's body. With a rumble, Gu Xingdao's body exploded. The terrifying power transformed into fine sword qi. It was incomparably sharp and unstoppable. It pierced through everything and instantly covered a radius of several thousand meters. None of the evil Dragon Hall disciples were spared. All of them were pierced, torn apart, and had their yuan spirits shattered. Gu Xingdao's spatial ring flew up and landed in Chu Mu's hand. With just one attack, the evil Dragon Hall had suffered disastrous losses. Demon. You are a demon. The evil Dragon Hall elder who was still alive pointed at Chu Mu with a trembling finger, his face filled with fear. Chu Mu's expression didn't change in the slightest. He ignored the broken limbs and the blood on the ground and walked step by step into the evil dragon palace. His goal this time was to deal with the evil Dragon Hall. Hence, he did not show any mercy. The evil Dragon Hall disciples who were still alive did not dare to charge forward and attack Chu Mu. Instead, they were so frightened that their legs went soft and their bodies trembled. Fear was like a virus, wreaking havoc in their mind. Chu Mu did not attack to kill them. A group of weak cultivators who were scared out of their wits would have limited achievements in the future. Chu Mu was like a heart demon that filled their minds. Even if 1 or 2 of them were able to obtain a fortuitous encounter in the future and become stronger, they would not be able to face Chu Mu. Step by step, Chu Mu arrived in front of the evil Dragon Hall's second elder. Looking down from above, it was as if a shadow had enveloped him. Where are the evil Dragon Hall's treasures? Chu Mu's tone was very calm. Fear continued to corrode the second elder's mind. His trembling lips could not help but close like a dying fish. Chu Mu's tone was as calm as ever, but the second elder's body couldn't help but tremble. In his fear, he seemed to have regained some of his consciousness. In the treasury, the second elder said with a trembling voice. Lead the way. His calm eyes caused the second elder to be unable to suppress the fear in his heart. It continued to erode away. He struggled to stand up, his body swaying as he led the way. From time to time, thoughts of hatred, revenge, and attacking Chu Mu would emerge in his heart. However, every time he thought about it, the thought would be eroded away by fear. Shakily, he led Chu Mu into the evil dragon palace's great hall. Then, they passed by the great hall and headed for the treasury. The key to the treasury was in Gu Xingdao's hands. The true ruler of the entire evil dragon hall was actually the first palace master, Gu Xingdao. The door to the treasury opened. Chu Mu looked around, then walked in and began to loot. As a powerful faction second only to the 5 city lord manors, the treasury of the evil dragon hall naturally had a decent collection. Cultivation methods, pills, swords, spiritual herbs, and so on. Chu Mu did not let go of any of them. Although most of the things were useless to him, he could bring them with him. When he returned to the deep blue world, he could bring them to the True Sword sect to fill up the treasury and increase the cultivation resources of the True Sword sect. After looting the treasury clean, Chu Mu swiped his finger and killed the second elder, grabbing his primordial spirit. At this moment, powerful auras descended, instantly locking onto Chu Mu. Every aura carried a shocking killing intent. The dense killing intent was like a volcano that had been dormant for thousands of years erupting. It was incomparably terrifying. There were a total of 3 such auras. Every one of them had reached the limit of the bright moon rank. Furthermore, the 3 auras could faintly combine and form a resonance. This resonance caused the 3 auras to continuously rise and strengthen. No matter who you are, you will die for daring to barge into my evil dragon hall and wreak havoc. A voice filled with boundless fury rang out. 3 figures appeared around Chu Mu at the same time, surrounding him. They were 3 old men with white hair and beard. As soon as they appeared, they showed no mercy and directly attacked with their swords. The great evil dragon's sword was unsheathed. Man and sword became one, directly transforming into 3 roaring evil dragons. They attacked ferociously from all angles. The 3 of them combined could be said to be perfect. With their strength at the limit of the bright moon rank and their cooperation in a battle formation, it was enough to contend with a bright yang rank sword saint. Chu Mu could not easily deal with such an opponent. He summoned the Blaze Spirit Sword. Using the Ghost Dragon Perplexing Steps, he was able to advance and retreat freely under the encirclement of the 3 evil dragons. His movements were unpredictable and difficult to grasp. The Blaze Spirit Sword glowed with an intense red sword light, shooting out rays of light like the sun. As soon as Chu Mu made his move, the remaining elders of the evil dragon hall were all shocked beyond belief. This person, at such a young age, actually possessed strength comparable to the 3 of them combined. Didn't that mean that this person's strength had already reached the level of a bright yang rank sword saint? They could not understand why the evil dragon hall would make an enemy of such a person. As the 3 remaining senior elders of the evil dragon hall, each of them had lived for several thousand years and knew a lot of things. It wasn't that there weren't any bright yang sword saints, but there were very, very few of them. Among the 5 great city lords' manors, there were only 1 or 2. Any bright yang sword saint was an incomparably terrifying existence. They were super powerhouses second only to the 7 kings. The 7 kings were one of the reasons why the 5 city lords' manors were able to stand for so many years. Another reason was the presence of those bright yang sword saints. It was too late to say anything now. This young expert with the strength of a bright yang rank sword saint had slaughtered his way into the evil dragon hall. He had slaughtered the evil Dragon Hall's first hall master, elders, and many disciples, and plundered the evil Dragon Hall's treasury. The enmity between him and the evil Dragon Hall could not be washed away. It could only be resolved with blood and death. No matter what, the three of them had to do their best to kill Chu Mu and revive the evil Dragon Hall. With the three of them, reviving the evil Dragon Hall would not be a difficult matter. The three veteran peak Bright Moon rank experts teamed up to deal with Chu Mu. The strength of a Bright Yang rank forced Chu Mu to focus on the battle. The journey from Sin Yen City to the 5 cities took a total of 5 years. During this period of time, Chu Mu spent all his time cultivating and comprehending. He did not fight at all. He knew that his strength had increased tremendously. He was at least a Bright Yang rank sword saint. However, he did not know exactly how strong he was because he lacked opponents strong enough to act as a reference. The time he killed the sword demon sect's disciple could not be considered as fighting at all. The difference in strength between them was simply too great. It was indescribable. It could not even be considered a warm-up. It was like casually squashing an ant. The combined battle formation of the 3 evil Dragon Palace elders gave Chu Mu sufficient pressure. However, that was all there was to it. No matter how the 3 of them attacked, they could not break through Chu Mu's defense. Every time Chu Mu counterattacked, they would be exhausted. This was the difference in strength. Use the evil dragon transformation, Chu Mu said. Arrogant. Even so, the 3 grand elders of the evil dragon palace also began to use the evil dragon transformation. As grand elders, they were once palace masters and great elders of the evil dragon palace, so they naturally cultivated the complete evil dragon transformation. The spiritual swords entered their bodies, and they instantly used the evil dragon transformation. Soon, an even more powerful aura swept out from their bodies. It was like a storm that wreaked havoc in all directions. The strength of the 3 elders increased by more than 10 times. Even the battle formation they set up was increased by more than 10 times. With their strength increased by 10 times, Chu Mu began to feel the true pressure. This pressure made Chu Mu excited. Only a powerful opponent could test his strength. After an intense battle, the Evil Dragon Hall elders under the Evil Dragon transformation could not do anything to Chu Mu. Even if they used sword techniques that were even more powerful than the Great Evil Dragon Sword, it was useless. If this is your strength, then it's a pity. Chu Mu's calm voice suddenly rang out. The Evil Dragon Palace's 3 senior elders were incomparably shocked. They had already used all of their strength, yet they were still unable to do anything to the other party. Soon after, as Chu Mu's voice rang out, an extreme sense of danger emerged. Waning moon. A waning moon had suddenly appeared in the sky at an unknown time. A faint white light shone down, directly imprisoning the space under the light. Everything stopped moving. The 3 elders of the Evil Dragon Hall could still think. Their consciousness was still there. Because of this, they were shocked. They could think, but they lost control of their bodies. They could not move. They erupted with power and broke free of this imprisonment. However, it was already too late. As if night had covered the sky, a meteor appeared and fell from the sky. Although it was just a meteor, it made them feel as if it was attacking the 3 of them at the same time. Indeed, after that meteor fell, it split into 3 and shot towards the 3 of them. This sword strike was the 15th strike of the 13 meteor strike. However, after Chu Mu's modification, it could split into 3. The might of each strike was extremely shocking and tyrannical. Under the Evil Dragon transformation, the 3 elders of the Evil Dragon Hall, whose defenses had increased greatly, could not block Chu Mu's sword strike. Their bodies were pierced. As the waning moon fell, its dazzling light seemed to shine into the hearts of the 3 elders, cutting open their already injured bodies. The 3 elders of the Evil Dragon Hall were dead. At this point, the Evil Dragon Hall only existed in name. Chu Mu stretched out his hand and grabbed at the air. He directly took the Evil Dragon swords and spatial rings of the 3 elders and put them away. These 3 evil dragon swords had been nurtured by the 3 elders. They were all medial-grade spirit swords. The evil dragon souls contained in them were even stronger and more valuable. Chapter 1853. With a glance, he saw that the evil dragon palace had collapsed everywhere. It was a scene of devastation caused by the shockwaves of the intense battle. His divine sense swept out in all directions, completely enveloping the entire evil dragon hall. However, he did not find any more hidden places. The evil dragon palace's evil dragon souls were self-produced. In other words, there was a place in the evil dragon palace where evil dragons were raised. It was probably very hidden, and Chu Mu couldn't find it. Perhaps only the evil dragon palace's grand elders and first palace master knew about it. However, they had already become souls under Chu Mu's sword. Their consciousnesses were destroyed, and Chu Mu could only leave regretfully. But overall, his harvest was not small. At least, he obtained many years of cultivation resources from the evil dragon palace, a low-grade evil dragon spirit sword, 3 mid-grade evil dragon spirit swords, the evil dragon palace's first palace master Gu Xingdao's spatial ring, and the spatial rings of 3 peak bright moon grand elders. In other words, not only did Chu Mu take revenge and eliminate the evil dragon palace, but he also returned with a bountiful harvest. With a flash of his body, Chu Mu instantly disappeared and left the evil dragon palace. After a period of time, 2 figures quickly arrived outside the evil dragon palace from afar. Wasn't the evil dragon palace sealed? No, someone said that the evil dragon palace's sealing formation was broken. These 2 were the experts of Zhanlong Manor. Not long ago, they sensed an unusual fluctuation and rushed over to check. They didn't expect to find that the evil dragon palace's sealing formation had been broken. The 2 looked at each other and quickly entered the evil dragon palace. Their expressions changed drastically. Corpses were everywhere, and blood flowed like a river. The ground was shattered, and the palace collapsed. The scene of devastation was shocking. It was as if a great battle had taken place. No, not a great battle, but a one-sided massacre. The 2 quickly checked and found that there was not a single survivor. This is Gu Xingdao. Who are these 3? When they arrived in front of the corpses of the 3 evil dragon palace's grand elders and sensed the remnant auras in the corpses, they knew that these 3 people were very powerful and terrifying when they were alive. They were definitely Bright Moon elite. Gu Xingdao's strength is close to the peak of the Bright Moon realm. Judging from the auras left behind by these 3 strangers, their strength shouldn't be below Gu Xingdao's. Who could have killed all of them? I didn't expect the evil dragon palace to have 3 hidden Bright Moon elites. If they were the hidden experts of the evil dragon palace, then it's very likely that they were at the level of the evil dragon palace's elders. They must have mastered the evil dragon transformation, and their strength must have increased tenfold. Yet, they were still killed under such circumstances. Then, what level of strength did the one who killed them reach? Could it be the expressions of the 2 experts from the Zhanlong mansion kept changing? In the end, they became extremely solemn. They did not mention whether the person who killed his way into the evil dragon palace was one person or a group of people, because from the aura left behind, it could be determined that there was only one person. With the strength of one person, he broke through the evil dragon palace's sealing formation, killed his way into the evil dragon palace, killed 4 Bright Moon elites of the evil dragon palace, and slaughtered countless disciples. Such a person's strength definitely surpassed the peak of the Bright Moon realm. There was only one possibility, a Bright Sun Sword Saint. As for experts at the level of the 7 kings, they didn't even dare to think about it. Every Bright Sun Sword Saint was incomparably precious. In the entire 5 cities, only the 5 city lord mansions had Bright Sun Sword Saint. No, there was one more now, and that was the Sword Demon Sex Sect Master, Sword Star Fengwui. Thinking of this, the 2 experts' expressions changed greatly. Could it be that the person who did it was Sword Demon Fengwui? Compared to Sword Star Fengwui, many people preferred to call him Sword Demon. It's possible that the origin spirit of the expert didn't disperse naturally, but was captured. In conclusion, the person who destroyed the evil dragon palace was believed to be Fengwui. Because, apart from the 5 city lord mansions, there was only one bright sun sword saint outside. This was a huge matter. The 2 experts from the Zhan Long Manor quickly left, and returned to the Zhan Long Manor to report this matter. Paper couldn't wrap fire. Even though the Zhan Long Manor didn't want this news to spread, they were still a step too late. The news of the evil dragon palace being destroyed spread like a violent storm, quickly spreading to the 5 cities and many camps, instantly causing a huge commotion. At the same time, most of the blame was pointed at Sword Demon Fengwui, believing that it was done by Sword Demon. Instantly, many forces felt threatened by the annihilation of the evil dragon palace. Originally, the Sword Demon sect was very powerful, but they didn't dare to directly challenge the 5 city lord mansions. Therefore, even if the Sword Demon sect entered the 5 cities, they didn't dare to cause trouble. Now, the huge evil dragon palace was actually destroyed in the Zhanlong city, and the culprit was suspected to be Sword Demon Fengwui. Many forces in the 5 cities couldn't help but tremble in fear. In an instant, the Zhanlong Manor's prestige was greatly challenged. Following that, there was even more news that the Zhanlong Manor's bright young sword saint, Long Huan, had made his way to the Sword Demon sect. Although he didn't say why he had made his move, anyone with a brain could guess that he was definitely looking for trouble with Sword Demon Fengwui. If possible, he would directly kill Fengwui to restore the Zhanlong Manor's prestige. Not long after, another shocking news spread. The Zhanlong Manor's bright young sword saint, Long Huan, had escaped from the Sword Demon sect with injuries. After quickly returning to the Zhanlong Manor, he immediately went into seclusion, and no news spread. As for the Sword Demon sect, there were people who saw Sword Demon Fengwui appear, seemingly unharmed. As soon as this news spread, it immediately caused an even greater commotion. The Zhanlong Manor's prestige fell, while the Sword Demon sect's prestige skyrocketed. The other 4 city lord mansions all became vigilant. The strength of the 5 city lord mansions was about the same, and the strength of their experts was also about the same. Since the Zhanlong Manor's bright young sword saint, Long Huan, couldn't defeat Sword Demon Fengwui, then even if the other 4 sword saints took action, they still wouldn't be able to win, unless they joined hands. For a moment, the 5 city lord mansions fell silent, while the Sword Demon sect took the opportunity to expand, taking over several camps in one go. Their prestige was incomparably strong, and the limelight was unparalleled. When Chu Mu heard this news, he was immediately speechless. He didn't expect that Sword Demon Fengwui would become the scapegoat for his annihilation of the evil dragon palace. However, seeing that Fengwui didn't give any explanation, it seemed that he was happy to take the blame. Perhaps this would make the Sword Demon sect's prestige even stronger, and help the Sword Demon sect's development even more. Chu Mu also wouldn't spread this kind of news, although if he wanted to, he could take out the evil dragon swords. Looks like I can only temporarily put aside the plan of using the evil dragon swords to trade. Chu Mu thought to himself. Originally, he had planned to use the evil dragon swords to trade with the Blood Massacre Hall for treasures that could refine the holy body. However, looking at the current situation, it wasn't very suitable. Chu Mu decided to wait a little longer as he stepped through the gates of Blood Massacre City. After destroying the evil dragon palace in the Zhanlong city, Chu Mu quickly left and rushed towards Blood Massacre City. After more than 5 years, he didn't know if the little maid Lin Biro was still in Blood Massacre City. If Chu Mu was worried about someone in the land of exile, then other than Gu Luankong, Yang Zhantian, and Lian Hongyun, it would be the little maid Lin Biro. Without encountering any obstructions, Chu Mu went straight to Long Yunkong's manor after stepping into Blood Slaughter City. Not long after, Chu Mu arrived outside the manor. Taking a deep breath, his slightly paused footsteps once again took large strides into the manor. Chu Mu didn't hide his aura. Therefore, the moment he stepped into the manor, he was immediately locked on by two sharp auras. These two auras had both reached the 9-star saint level, although they were only at the beginning of the 9-star saint level. Immediately, the two auras stiffened and then retracted. Words filled with excitement and surprise came out from their mouth. Young Master! Young Master! The waning moon sword saint and the rock sword saint instantly rushed over, looking incomparably excited. Not bad, both of you have broken through. Chu Mu smiled faintly. Back then, these two people who had surrendered under his sword and were forced to become his guards had almost exhausted their potential. If they didn't have any fortuitous encounters, it would be difficult for them to break through to the 9 heavenly layers in their lifetime. Now, after more than 5 years, they had broken through. In fact, meeting Chu Mu, becoming Chu Mu's guards, and receiving guidance from Chu Mu were their fortuitous encounters. After practicing sword skills for 5 years, they had found the opportunity to break through and steadily broke through to the 9-star saint level. Speaking of which, the waning moon sword saint and the rock sword saint had already reached the limit of the 8-star saint level. It was natural for them to break through to the 9-star saint level. However, their potential was probably limited to this. At this moment, a figure appeared with a faint fragrance, like a lily of the valley. Young Master! Lin Biruo rushed out of the room, indescribable excitement surging in her heart. For a moment she couldn't say anything. Ever since the news of Chu Mu's death had spread, Lin Biruo couldn't believe it and had been waiting for it. Now, the young master had finally returned. Chu Mu sensed that Lin Biruo's qi was stronger than before. Her cultivation level had increased, and she had reached the peak of the 6th sky of Immemorial Realm. However, her qi wasn't very stable. It seemed like she had just broken through to the peak of the 6th sky of Immemorial Realm. In 5 years, with Lin Biruo's talent, she had reached the peak of the 6th sky of Immemorial Realm from the early stage of the 6th sky of Immemorial Realm. Who knew how much effort she had put in to reach this step? Her desire to become stronger was evident. After a long while, Lin Biruo's excitement calmed down. However, she was still very excited and happy. Her cheeks were flushed red. Young Master, I knew that you would be fine. After a long while, Lin Biruo said a complete sentence. I'm fine. After being swallowed into the spatial crack, I went to the edge of the land of exile. It took me a long time to come back. Chu Mu said very simply. Come, let me see how your sword skills have improved in the past 5 years. Chapter 1854. Master Long Huan, are you still injured? Asked a bright moon sword saint from Zhan Long's school. I'm not completely healed, but I'm almost there, said Long Huan. His face was still pale. His injuries weren't a big deal. He would recover in a few days, but the injuries to his primordial spirit couldn't be healed that easily. He said that he was almost there to reassure the other strong cultivators of Zhan Long's school. He was considering whether or not he should go to Qingsha School. Qingsha School had done a lot of research on primordial spirits, and they knew more about the recovery of primordial spirit. Master Long Huan, the situation isn't good for Zhan Long's school. The bright moon sword saint couldn't see the extent of Long Huan's injuries, but he had to say it. Our reputation has been affected, said Long Huan. Long Huan said indifferently, as expected. The sword demon Feng Wui is indeed very strong, even stronger than me. His attacks can affect and even injure the primordial spirit. It's very frightening. You can't easily make him your enemy. Master Long Huan, what should we do now? If it were any other time, the decision would naturally be made by the house master. However, the dragon-slaying king had already left for many years, and there was no news of him. The strongest in the house were the bright young sword saints. There were 2 of them. One was Long Huan, and the other had been in seclusion for 1,000 years. Don't worry. Long Huan's voice was still calm. he didn't seem to be affected. In his opinion, the ups and downs of reputation were normal. Zhan Long's school had been established for many years and had gone through countless storms. They had almost been destroyed in the worst case, but they had still managed to survive. Now it was just a test. As long as Zhan Long King was still alive, Zhan Long School would still have an unparalleled position. Their reputation had been affected, but it was only temporary. Similarly, the bright young sword saints of the other 4 prefectures had the same thoughts as Long Huan. Therefore, even though their prestige had been affected, even though the sword demon sect's prestige was like the sun in the sky, it was only temporary. It was like the moon in the water. As long as the 7 kings returned, the sword demon sect's strength would be like a bubble that would burst with a poke. Unless, in the sword demon sect, a king-level powerhouse also appeared. However, after so many years, there had only been 7 king-level cultivators in the land of exile. They had passed down generations after generations, but the 8th king-level cultivator had never appeared. Was it a problem with cultivation resources? Or was it a matter of cultivation talent? He didn't know, he couldn't guess. Maybe other than the 7 kings, no one else knew what was going on. Maybe even the 7 kings themselves didn't know. If one didn't become a king, one would still struggle at the bottom. Perhaps bright young sword saints like them could be said to be awe-inspiring, but the truth was that they had always been working hard to find an opportunity to break through to the king realm. It was just that it was impossible for them to do so, and they might even die in the process of breaking through. This was also the reason why bright young sword saints were so rare. Could the sword demon sect master, sword demon Feng Wui, become a king? Clearly, in the eyes of the bright young sword saints of the 5 city lords' manors, this was an impossible matter. If they couldn't become kings, they would at most be at the bright young realm, which was stronger than them. They wouldn't be able to affect the foundations of the 5 city lord manors and shake their ruling positions. Ha 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 ha. Is this demon transformation? I feel like my entire body is filled with power. In the sword demon sect, a high-level Saint Realm expert walked out of the demon transformation pool of the sword demon sect. Feeling the increase in power in his body, he immediately let out a hearty laugh. He was extremely happy and excited. To cultivators, there was nothing more exciting than an increase in cultivation and strength. And now, without any increase in cultivation, the Saint Realm expert's saint body was clearly strengthened, which brought about an increase in strength. This meant that with the same cultivation, their battle prowess would be even greater, and their potential would be even more shocking. As the prestige of the 5 city lord manors fell, the prestige of the sword demon sect soared. They were in the limelight and developed at an unprecedented speed. Originally, the sword demon sect only had 3 camps submit to them, but now they had 4 to 5 more camps submit to them. The more camps submitted to the sword demon sect, the greater the overall strength of the sword demon sect, and the wider their influence. From the various camps, the more outstanding cultivators were selected and given the right to enter the demon transformation pool. They would obtain the ability to transform into demons and obtain even greater power. It could be said that the demon transformation pool was an important foundation of the sword demon sect. It was the foundation of the sword demon sect's strength. Within the sword demon sect, the sect master of the sword demon sect, Feng Wui, asked condescendingly, "Have you still not found out who destroyed the evil dragon hall?" Reporting to sect master, "We haven't found out." The person below him replied very respectfully. This was not only a kind of reverence due to the difference in strength, but also a kind of reverence that came from the depths of one's soul. "Continue investigating," Feng Wui said. His voice was not as calm as a human's. "Yes," the subordinate replied respectfully, then turned and left. "A bright young sword saint that doesn't belong to the 5 city lord manors. Who knows how delicious his origin spirit would be?" Feng Wui sighed softly. His voice carried a kind of desire and greed. As a fierce demon of the secret realm who had taken over the body of a human, he had an extraordinary desire for origin spirits. It was something that could directly increase his strength. The 5 cities were in a state of panic, and the sword demon sect was boundlessly powerful. However, all of this had nothing to do with Chu Mu. After returning to the manor, Chu Mu stayed in the manor every day to cultivate. On the way back from Sin Yen City, his cultivation had successfully broken through from the peak of the 8th heavenly layer to the early stage of the 9th heavenly layer. Since then, with the help of the dragon origin pill, his cultivation had been constantly improving. He was already close to the peak of the early stage of the 9th heavenly layer. Chu Mu estimated that within 3 years, he would be able to break through to the middle stage of the 9th heavenly layer. As for the cultivation of his saint body, when he left Sin Yen City, it was at the late stage of the 7th heavenly layer. On the way back, it had already refined all 20 saint blood lotus pills. His saint body's cultivation had broken through again, reaching the middle stage of the 8th heavenly layer. It seemed like a huge improvement. However, when he thought about it, the saint blood lotus pill was a very high-grade physique refining pill. It was a physique refining pill that was not inferior to the blood slaughtering hall's saint blood treasure blood. The black blood lotus seed was very rare. Apart from the black blood lotus seed, it also needed to be combined with other spiritual herbs. There were at least 10 kinds of spiritual herbs that were second only to the black blood lotus seed. Even if the 5 great cities wanted to gather all of them, it wouldn't be easy. Back then, the Tang family of Sin Yen City had gathered all of these spiritual herbs in order to repay Chu Mu for saving Tang Qianchua's life. It could be said that they had used up many years of savings. At the very least, they wouldn't be able to take out a second batch of spiritual herbs in the next few hundred years. The energy contained in each saint blood lotus pill was very rich and shocking. In terms of pure energy, it had completely surpassed the saint blood treasure blood. Its value was immeasurable. After refining 20 saint blood lotus pills, Chu Mu's saint body broke through all the way from the late 7th class to the peak 7th class. After that, it broke through to the early 8th class and then to the middle 8th class. However, even with the saint blood lotus pills, it wouldn't be easy for Chu Mu to improve his saint body. Next, it would be even more difficult to refine the sacred body and upgrade it to a higher level. Now, 16 or 17 years had passed since he came to the land of exile. There were less than 13 years left. Chu Mu's goal was to improve his Yuan Qi cultivation to the peak of the 9th heavenly layer in less than 13 years. Then, he would refine his saint body to the peak of the 9th heavenly layer. At present, the possibility of his Yuan Qi reaching the peak of the 9th heavenly layer was very high. However, the possibility of his saint body reaching the peak of the 9th heavenly layer wasn't high. It was much more difficult than Yuan Qi cultivation. Chu Mu didn't have the confidence to achieve it. He could only continue to look for better treasures to refine his saint body. He planned to use the evil dragon swords of the evil dragon hall to make a deal with the blood slaughtering hall. After all, the inheritance of the blood slaughtering hall was directly related to the cultivation of his saint body. He meditated in the manner and examined the sword skills of the waning moon sword saint, the monolithic sword saint, and Lin Biruo. He discovered that their sword skills had improved a lot compared to 5 years ago. Lin Biruo had also worked hard on the sword skill that Chu Mu taught her. She was very familiar with it. Although she hadn't grasped the essence of it, she could already fully unleash the power of the sword skill. Time passed day by day. Chu Mu cultivated every day. With the dragon origin pill, he didn't need to be distracted in his sword cultivation. Thus, he could take out 4 more hours every day to comprehend sword skills and so on. Due to the lack of body refining treasures, it was almost impossible to make any progress in the cultivation of his saint body. It required a long period of time and wasn't that simple. Thus, Chu Mu, who was short on time, could only put it aside for the time being. As a result, he spent most of his time comprehending and cultivating sword skills. Sword skills covered a wide range of areas. Sword universe, basic sword skills, self-created sword styles, sword skills, sword realm, sword domain, and so on. During the 5 years on the way back, apart from the increase in his cultivation, Chu Mu's comprehension of the sword universe and sword universe had also deepened. His application of the various powers in his body had also deepened. The current him actually didn't know where the limits of his strength were. Even when he killed his way into the Evil Dragon Hall and fought against the 3 Evil Dragon Hall Grand Elders who had used the Evil Dragon transformation and set up a battle formation, he hadn't used his full strength. Although his opponents were powerful, the pressure they brought to him wasn't enough. Chu Mu longed to fight against an even more powerful opponent. In his heart, he had also set an opponent for himself, Sword Devil Fengwui. However, the time wasn't right yet. It wasn't time for them to fight yet. Chu Mu wasn't in a hurry, because this battle would come sooner or later. Chapter 1855. The interior of the manor was like an independent little world. It was undisturbed by the outside world, and everything was peaceful. As the sword light flickered, circles of ripples spread out like ripples. They spread out layer by layer and swept out in all directions. Every ripple contained astonishing power, and as they spread out, they cut through everything in their path. The rippling sword was also known as the 8 rippling technique. Lin Biruo had trained bitterly for many years, and under Chu Mu's personal guidance, she had finally grasped a sliver of its essence. Today was a year after Chu Mu returned to the manor in Bloodbath City. The changes in the outside world were great, but the effects on the 5 cities were only preliminary. The manors in the 5 cities were not much of a power, so they were not affected at all. Chu Mu and the others who stayed in the manors were naturally fine as well. However, Chu Mu did not let go of any news of the outside world. He had the Waning Moon Sword Saint and the Monolithic Sword Saint pay close attention to all of it, to see just what kind of changes there were. The destruction of the Evil Dragon Hall a year ago was believed to be the doing of the sect master of the Sword Demon sect, Fengwui, which boosted his reputation. Afterwards, he defeated the Bright Yang Sword Saint of the Dragon-Slaying Manor, Long Huan, which made Fengwui even more famous. For a moment, he suppressed the 5 city lord manors and entered a period of rapid development. More and more cultivators joined the Sword Demon sect, obtaining the ability to demonify through the demonification pool and obtaining greater strength. Powerful strength would make people intoxicated. After demonifying, they could devour yuan spirits to rapidly increase their own cultivation base. This made the disciples of the Sword Demon sect restless, and they went around killing people. In the various camps of the land of exile, there were bloody massacres after massacres. A portion of the Sword Demon sect's disciples were killed, but a portion of them devoured souls and became even more powerful. Overall, the Sword Demon sect's strength did not decrease at all. Instead, it increased. Camps after camps surrendered or were destroyed. Battles and massacres could be seen everywhere. The land of exiles became extremely chaotic. Outside the 5 cities, it was possible to encounter the disciples of the Sword Demon sect at any time and be surrounded and killed. As a result, in just a short year, large groups of cultivators had surged into the 5 cities, seeking the protection of the 5 city lord manors. In this year, the 5 city lord manors did not take the initiative to attack. They only had some small skirmishes with the Sword Demon sect. There was still no news of the 7 kings, and they still hadn't returned. The situation was becoming more and more intense. Brother Chu. Long Yunkong strode into the manor and cupped his hands in greeting as soon as he saw Chu Mu. Brother Long, you've made a breakthrough in your cultivation base and become even stronger, said Chu Mu with a smile. Half a year ago, Long Yunkong came to the manor and saw Chu Mu. He was very happy that Chu Mu was still alive. After all, he treated Chu Mu as a good friend. In the past 5 years, Long Yunkong's cultivation level had increased a lot. He had reached the peak of the seventh sky of immemorial realm. Half a year ago, he had been cultivating in seclusion in the three sacred sects, trying to break through to the next level. Now, his chi was at the early eighth sky of immemorial realm. No matter how hard I try, I won't be able to catch up to Brother Chu. Long Yunkong laughed. It was a fact, but also a joke. He had already given up the thought of comparing himself with Chu Mu. Otherwise, it would only be very tiring. When he first met Chu Mu, he was at the early seventh sky of immemorial realm, while Chu Mu was at the early fourth sky of immemorial realm. Now, he was at the early eighth sky of immemorial realm, while Chu Mu was at the early ninth sky of immemorial realm. How could they compare? After chatting for a while, Long Yunkong unsheathed his sword and began to compare sword skills with Chu Mu. This was a routine every time he came to the manor. As a genius, Long Yunkong had decent talent, whether it was in cultivation or sword technique. Because he often exchanged sword techniques with Chu Mu, his sword techniques were constantly improving. Now, his attainments were even more profound, surpassing geniuses of the same level and reaching an even higher level. In the sharpness of the sword light there was a change. It seemed simple, but was actually intricate and complicated. It was hard to grasp. It was enough to defeat a normal 8-star saint rank initial stage expert in one strike. However, in Chu Mu's eyes, it was still not enough. No matter how long Yunkong used it, he was unable to harm Chu Mu at all. All the trajectories and even the flaws were clearly displayed in Chu Mu's eyes. All of this came from the obvious gap between their sword skills. Brother Chu, I've learned a new sword skill. It's one of the secret sword skills of the three saint sects. It's called Human Saint True Image Sword. Long Yunkong's continuous attacks couldn't do anything to Chu Mu. Although he was shocked, he didn't feel dispirited because this was normal. Shortly after, he retracted his sword and stood upright, pointing it towards the sky like an incense stick. His expression was solemn as he said in a serious tone, "Please teach me. Please." Chu Mu stared at Long Yunkong and immediately felt that Long Yunkong's aura had undergone a miraculous change. Originally, Long Yunkong's aura was like a white cloud floating in the sky. But now, it became more dignified and surrounded his body. It was as if the floating white clouds in the sky were frozen in an instant. Vaguely, there was the aura of a saint. Human Saint True Image Sword. This was one of the three secret sword skills of the three saint sects. The other two were Earth Saint and Heaven Saint. These three secret sword skills were the foundation of the three saint sect. Long Yunkong's cultivation had reached the early stage of the eighth sky of the ancient era. Because of his status in the three saint sects, he was taught the first sword of the three saint secret sword. If it were someone else, they would have to be at the early stage of the ninth sky of the ancient era. In the past 6 months, Long Yunkong had not only been cultivating in seclusion to make breakthroughs, but also to practice the Human Saint True Image Sword. However, as one of the three saint secret swords of the three saint sects, Long Yunkong had only scratched the surface in half a year, even though it was the weakest and simplest sword skill. He knew Chu Mu's terrifying talent and high realm in sword skills. Therefore, he asked for Chu Mu's guidance. As he accumulated power, Long Yunkong's aura became more and more serious. The wind stopped and the leaves in the manor stopped moving. Everyone could feel that a storm was coming. The air was oppressive. In the distance, the waning moon sword saint and the rock sword saint were shocked. Then they felt bitter. Originally, they thought that they had made great progress in their swordsmanship, but compared to Long Yunkong, there was still a clear gap. They also realized that the swordsmanship of those top forces was very tyrannical. Just the aura emitted by the swordsmanship was enough to make them feel oppressed. It should be known that their cultivation was one celestial layer higher than Long Yunkong's. As Long Yunkong's aura grew stronger and stronger, Chu Mu's expression changed from indifference to solemnity. Human Saint True Image Sword. Human Saint True Image. Human Saint True Image. Human Saint True Image. Human Saint True Image. When a man becomes a saint, he stops his 7 emotions and 6 desires. He manifests his image and kills everything. The human saint's true image sword is indeed unique. For a moment, all kinds of inspirations appeared, but they were not complete. In an instant, Long Yunkong slashed out with his sword. The sword light shone brightly as he became one with his sword, instantly tearing apart the void. A terrifying pressure poured down from all directions, directly hitting Chu Mu and suppressing him. This kind of strong pressure was enough to affect an ordinary 8-star saint. If they were unprepared, they would be unable to move for a moment. For a strong cultivator, a moment was enough to decide many things. The moment the pressure poured in from all directions, the sword light was already in front of him. There was no way to dodge it. In fact, Chu Mu did not need to dodge it. In fact, he did not even pull out his sword. He only raised his sword finger and gently moved it. Vaguely, there seemed to be the sound of metal clashing. The sword light that could cut through everything collapsed in an instant, revealing the long sword. Chu Mu's sword finger was blocked. Chu Mu's sword finger was not damaged at all. His sword finger trembled slightly, and a powerful force burst out. Under the shock, Long Yunkong could not help but continuously retreat. The pressure around him collapsed and disappeared in an instant. The aura that made Waning Moon and Rock Boulder feel oppressed also disappeared without a trace. Long Yunkong retreated more than 10 meters before he could steady himself. His face first turned abnormally red, then pale. He had only just grasped the surface of Human Saint True Image Sword. It had consumed too much of his essence. Yes, the Human Saint's sword of origin was not a regular sword technique. It was a secret sword technique, an absolute killing move. Its power was extremely terrifying, so the usage of energy it involved was countless times more complicated than regular sword technique. It involved the use of one's strength, mind, and various other aspects. Not a single one of them could be missing. Long Yunkong was only at the initial stage of cultivation. It was still very difficult for him to unleash the power of the Human Saint True Image Sword. If he could reach the small success stage, he would be able to severely injure or even kill an ordinary 9-star saint with one strike. It's not because he hasn't used his sword. It seems that he lacks the other 2 swords, Chu Mu said as if he was talking to himself. Seeing Long Yunkong use his sword, he had an inspiration. He vaguely felt that this Human Saint True Image sword would be useful to him. It would be helpful, but it was lacking. He originally thought that it was because Long Yunkong had not used his sword and had not shown more of its mysteries. Now, it seemed that this was not the case. Although Long Yunkong was only at the beginning level, Chu Mu could still see more mysteries. He could not describe this kind of inspiration with words. He could only be sure that it was useful to him. Therefore, he wanted to comprehend it. From the looks of it now, it seemed to be missing the connection between the other 2 swords. Perhaps, only by gathering the Sword of Mortal Saint's true form and the other 2 swords and combining them to become complete would one be able to comprehend more from it and absorb the inspiration to improve oneself. Brother Long, I have something to discuss with you, Chu Mu said seriously. Brother Chu, please speak. Long Yunkong also realized that what Chu Mu wanted to say was not ordinary. I want to take a look at the 3 Saints' secret sword and see if you can pass it on, Chu Mu said, revealing his purpose. Chapter 1856. The 3 Sacred Secret Sword was the foundation of the 3 sacred sects. Its value was unimaginable. If Chu Mu wanted to borrow it, it naturally wouldn't be that easy. He proposed to borrow it because he was willing to pay a price he could afford in exchange. This was a trade. As a core disciple of the 3 Saints sects, Long Yunkong had a very high status. He could even compare to an elder in the sect. Thus, his words carried a lot of weight. It was completely possible for him to convey Chu Mu's message. Of course, Long Yunkong could only convey the message. He couldn't make a decision. With Chu Mu's message, Long Yunkong returned to the Three Saints sects and directly met with the leader of the Three Saints sects. Chu Mu's return was very low-key. However, he didn't deliberately hide it, nor did he deliberately publicize it. After more than 5 years, everyone thought that he was dead. After he returned, he directly destroyed the evil dragon palace. No one knew that he had returned. Then, he quickly returned to the manor in Bloodslaughter City and stayed there. Thus, no one knew that he had really returned alive. Chu Mu? The unparalleled sword star from 6 years ago, Chu Mu? The leader of the Three Saints sects immediately frowned and asked. Yes, leader. Long Yunkong stood below and answered respectfully. I didn't think that he would survive after being swallowed into the spatial crack. The leader of the Three Saints sects, Qinwei King, relaxed his frown and sighed softly. He seemed to be very shocked. The leader of the 7 stars back then lived up to his name. However, the Three Saints' secret sword is the foundation of the Three Saints sects. It is a secret that cannot be passed on. Unless he is willing to join the Three Saints sects and become a part of us. I understand, leader, Long Yunkong said helplessly. He knew that Chu Mu couldn't join the Three Saints sects and become a part of the Three Saints sects. However, he was only a disciple of the Three Saints sect. Although his status wasn't low, he couldn't make such a big decision. He could only convey the message. Long Yunkong left quickly, leaving only Qinwei Wang, the leader of the Triple Saints sect, in the hall. Chu Mu, under the pursuit of the ancient blade, was swallowed into the spatial crack and returned alive. Could it be that the destruction of the evil dragon palace was not caused by sword devil Feng Wui, but... King Qinwei thought to himself and frowned. Then, he shook his head. Impossible, it should not be him. Even if he is the head of the 7 stars, and his talent surpasses the other 6 stars, it is impossible for him to surpass the other 6 stars by that much. One had to know that the current 6 stars were only at the bright moon rank. There was still a huge gap between them and the bright sun rank. This gap wasn't something that could be easily bridged. Of course, the 6 great stars were all in seclusion. The 5 city lord manors and the flowing light army had used a large amount of resources to nurture them, raising their cultivation as quickly as possible. After reaching the pinnacle, they would raise their other aspects, allowing them to reach the level of a bright young sword saint. Since the 6 of them had yet to come out of seclusion, it was likely that they had yet to reach the bright young grade. There was only one person who had destroyed the evil dragon palace, and through various signs, that person's strength was not something that someone who had just entered the bright young grade could compare to. The possibility of it being sword devil Feng Wui was rather high. However, no matter what, Chu Mu was once the head of the 7 stars. His talent was above the other 6 stars. Even if his current strength had not reached the bright young grade, it was very likely that he had reached the limit of the bright moon rank. If he could join the Three Saints sects, the Three Saints sects would have one more peak combatant, and their overall strength would increase even further. After all, the strongest expert of the Three Saints sects was only at the limit of the bright moon rank. This is the sect master's wish. Long Yunkong looked at Chu Mu apologetically. It's a pity, said Chu Mu. He was willing to pay a price, but if the price was to join the Three Saints sects and be tied to the Three Saints sects, he was not willing to do so. It seemed that he was not fated to learn the Three Saints' secret sword for now. There was nothing Long Yunkong could do about this. He could only put this matter aside and ask Chu Mu for some sword techniques before leaving. After leaving this time, Long Yunkong didn't come back for a few months. Chu Mu also received news that the situation outside was becoming more and more tense. The Sword Demon sect disciples were becoming more and more arrogant. They were extremely insolent, unbridled, and tyrannical. Even more camps were destroyed because they were unwilling to submit to the Sword Devil sect. Out of the original dozens of camps, more than 10 had been destroyed by the Sword Devil sect, and a dozen or so had submitted to the Sword Devil sect, becoming their subordinate forces. In a short period of time, the Sword Devil sect grew. Apart from the fact that they did not have any king-level experts, they had become a powerful force that could rival or even surpass the 5 city leaders' manors. They were a serious threat to the status of the 5 city leaders' manors. More and more people entered the 5 cities to seek shelter, which caused the number of people in the 5 cities to increase by several times. The living conditions became more and more tense, and the prices increased as well. The order was also affected. Occasionally there would be some conflicts and bloodshed. In response, the guards of the 5 city leaders' manors reacted quickly. They used a thunderous method to capture people directly and kill those who resisted. They used a forceful method to suppress them directly. However, the forceful method could only suppress them temporarily. If this continued for a long time, it would cause a huge backlash, which would not be a good thing for the 5 city leaders' manors. On the surface, the Sword Devil sect was unstoppable, but in the dark, the 5 cities were in turmoil. A huge riot could be foreseen. In response, the 5 city leaders' manors attached great importance to this and tried to think of a solution. Today, 1.5 years after Chu Mu returned to the manor in Blood Slaughter City, a group of people suddenly broke into the manor. They all emitted powerful chi ripples. They were a dozen high-level saint-level experts, and the leader was even a 9-star high-level saint-level expert. "Who are you? What do you want?" Pan Yen, who was practicing his sword, immediately asked. "Does this manor belong to you?" "It belongs to us now. You can choose to stay here or leave." The leading 9-star high-level saint-level expert said directly. "Get out!" Elder Waning Moon shouted rudely. Her chi was sharp like a sword. "You want to do this the hard way? Kill the 2 of them." One of the dozen people was filled with killing intent and immediately drew his sword. Among these dozen people, the weakest was an 8-star saint-level expert, and the strongest was a 9-star high-level saint-level expert. Although Elder Waning Moon and Pan Yen were not weak, they could not fight against them. If they really fought, Elder Waning Moon and Pan Yen would be killed in a few moves. At this time, a sword light flashed. Without any prelude, it seemed to have come from the void. It was indescribably sharp. The dozen high-level saint-level experts who wanted to take over the manor only saw the sword light flash in front of them. They could not dodge it. The sword light cut through the air, leaving a straight mark in the air. The dozen people immediately stopped moving, maintaining the posture of drawing their sword. Streaks of blood appeared on their neck. Then, a suction force appeared out of nowhere. The dozen or so souls flew out of their heads and were projected into the manor. Chu Mu had made his move. "Young master is so strong. I can't imagine." Elder Waning Moon and Pan Yen were both amazed. In the next half a year, a group of people would break into the manor every once in a while. They wanted to take over the manor. The most powerful group was a 9-star saint-level expert, and some were even at the peak of the 9-star saint level. Moreover, they were very close to the dark star level. Even so, they did not gain the slightest advantage. They all died to Chu Mu's sword light without even seeing him. In order to prevent trouble, Chu Mu released a ray of sword chi in the manor. This sword chi was powerful enough to heavily injure a dark star sword saint. Anyone who approached with killing intent would be locked down. If they tried to force their way in, they would be attacked directly. As a result, the manor returned to its peaceful state. While the manor was peaceful, the 5 cities were even more chaotic. Conflicts continued, and even some of the guards of the 5 city lords were killed. The situation was getting worse and worse. Half a year later, which was also the second year since Chu Mu's return, an incomparably powerful aura soared into the sky from the 5 city lords' mansions. It was like a terrifying ray of sword chi shooting into the sky, stirring up the wind and clouds. The sharpness it emitted suppressed all directions, covering the entire city. In the manor, Chu Mu's eyes flashed as he looked in the direction of the city lord's mansion. Another bright young level expert has appeared in the slaughtering blood manor. Seems like it's Tu Qianjun. Chumu muttered to himself. That's right, the young master of the slaughtering blood manor, Tu Qianjun, had broken through and become a bright young level sword saint. Not only him, but the other 5 star lords had also broken through, becoming bright young level sword saints. Under the powerful aura, the commotion in the city was suppressed, and many people went into hiding. The 5 young masters came out of seclusion with astonishing power, taking control of the 5 city lords' mansions in one go. They issued all kinds of orders to clean up the chaos in the city, and to understand all kinds of news that had happened during their seclusion, especially news about sword demon Feng Wui. When they heard that the veteran bright young level sword Saint Long Huan had been defeated by Feng Wui, they were immediately shocked. One had to know that they had broken through during their seclusion and stepped into the bright young level. Although there was still room for improvement, they could only be considered as beginners. Compared to veteran experts like Long Huan, there was still a slight gap. If Long Huan wasn't Feng Wui's opponent, they wouldn't be able to fight him one-on-one either. In such a situation, we can only join hands. Although they weren't very willing, they didn't have much time to raise their strength. The 6 star lords had the same idea. Not long after, a piece of news spread out, immediately shocking everyone. The young masters of the 5 city lords' mansions and the young masters of the Flowing Light Army had formed an alliance with the Flowing Light Army, called the Bright Young Alliance. Although it wasn't stated clearly, many people could see that the Bright Young Alliance had appeared to resist the Sword Demon sect, which was as powerful as the sun in the midday sky. This also served as a foil to the Sword Demon sect's strength, as well as the Sword Demon Feng Wui's tyrannical strength. Bright Young Alliance. Feng Wui naturally received the news, and immediately revealed a strange smile. He swept a glance at the 12 motionless figures below. Then let's see if the Bright Young Alliance or the 12 heavenly demons of my Sword Demon sect are stronger. Chapter 1857. The Bright Young Alliance was led by the 6 stars. The experts of the Flowing Light Legion and the 5 city lords' manors were united to form the Bright Young Army. All the major forces and sects in the 5 cities were called to join as well. Every day there would be news of certain sects and clans joining the Bright Young Alliance and becoming a member of the alliance. The 3 sacred sects were the strongest force under the Bloodbath Manor in Bloodbath City. Naturally, they would join the Bright Young Alliance and become a part of it. The movements of the 5 cities were huge. On the contrary, the Sword Demon sect's movements became smaller. No one could understand what was going on. It was as if the wheel of fortune had turned. Some people who couldn't see through the situation thought that the Bright Young Alliance's appearance had suppressed the Sword Demon sect's momentum. However, those who could see through the situation knew that this was just an illusion. The Sword Demon sect's actions were obviously because they had other plans. Those with higher intelligence could see that the current situation had reached a limit. If this continued, a huge battle would be unavoidable. It would be fine if they didn't fight, but this battle would definitely engulf everyone. No cultivator would be able to escape. Chumu also saw through the situation. He knew that once the battle started, he wouldn't be able to stay out of it unless he left the land of exile and returned to the deep blue world. Therefore, he made his move. After 2 years, he stepped out of the manor for the first time and headed towards the Bloodbath Manor. Soon, Chumu arrived outside the Bloodbath Manor and walked in. His speed didn't seem fast, and he didn't hide his figure. However, the guards guarding the entrance didn't notice him at all. They felt that Chumu was like an invisible person, walking past them and entering the manor. Actually, his speed was too fast. Even if he didn't reveal his full strength, it wasn't something that a few high-level Saint Realm experts could notice. His path was unobstructed. Relying on his senses, Chumu arrived at Tu Qianjun's location. At this moment, Tu Qianjun was in the main hall of the Bloodbath Manor, meeting with the experts of the Bloodbath Manor and hosting a meeting. Tu Qianjun was a bright young sword saint. Other than him, the bright moon sword saints and dark star sword saints of the Bloodbath Manor were all gathered in the main hall. Without any fluctuations, Chu Mu directly appeared in the hall. Tu Qianjun only sensed him the moment he appeared. His eyes narrowed, and a blood-red light pierced through the void like a rainbow. Then, those dark star and bright moon elites released their auras and locked onto Chu Mu. However, when Chu Mu stood in front of them, they couldn't lock onto him. It was as if he was a cloud of nothingness. This was the difference between realms. Chu Mu. The bloody light in Tu Qianjun's eyes disappeared and was replaced by shock. He exclaimed, "Aren't you already dead?" "I was lucky not to die," Chu Mu said with a smile. Hearing Tu Qianjun's words, the rest of the Slaughtering Blood Manor's experts widened their eyes in shock. Their shocked gazes landed on Chu Mu. Rumor had it that Chu Mu had been chased by the ancient blade and was swallowed by the spatial rift. He should have been dead, but no one had expected him to still be alive. They all knew how powerful the spatial rift was. "It's good that you didn't die." Tu Qianjun also smiled. Back then, the 7 stars were neck to neck. Later, Chu Mu took the lead and surpassed them. The 6 of them also treated Chu Mu as a goal to catch up to. As for Sword Devil Feng Wui, although he was the 8th star and was also known as the strongest star, he wasn't within their scope of recognition. This was because they felt that Feng Wui wasn't a pure person. "My purpose today is to make a deal," Chu Mu said directly. "What kind of deal?" Tu Qianjun asked. "For evil dragon swords in exchange for treasures to refine the saint body," Chu Mu said. "The evil dragon swords contain the evil dragon's soul. It can be extracted and is very useful." "I agree to this deal," Tu Qianjun said. Now that he had the strength of a bright young elite, he could be considered the person in charge of the Slaughtering Blood Manor when the Slaughtering Blood King wasn't around. He had the power to make decisions. Therefore, no one had any objections. Chu Mu took out the 4 evil dragon swords. The aura emitted by each sword shocked everyone. 1 low grade and 3 mid grade. A peak bright moon sword saint exclaimed. Even Tu Qianjun was shocked. They originally thought that the 4 evil dragon swords were only low grade. They didn't expect that 3 of them were mid grade. The difference between mid-grade and low-grade was very obvious. The evil dragon's soul contained within also had a difference in quality. Shortly after, Tu Qianjun seemed to have thought of something. His eyes emitted a shocking light as he locked onto Chu Mu. His eyes were like swords, as if he wanted to pierce through Chu Mu. "We can make a deal, but I hope that you and I can fight before the deal is done," Tu Qianjun said in a deep voice as he restrained the light in his eyes. Chu Mu caught the change in Tu Qianjun's eyes. He understood that Tu Qianjun might have seen something. However, it wasn't 2 years ago. Even if it was announced, he didn't care. "All right." Chu Mu directly agreed. Tu Qianjun had the strength of a bright sun sword saint, so he was qualified to fight with him. "Let's go to the back." Tu Qianjun stood up and led the way. Not long after, Chu Mu, Tu Qianjun, and the Slaughter Blood Mansion's 3 great fighting strength experts all arrived at the 1000 battle stage behind the Great Hall. This was a place specially used for duels. It was extremely spacious and the floor was made of silver stone. Moreover, it was covered in a layer of strengthened seals. Even a 9-star Saint rank expert's full strength attack wouldn't be able to break through. The experts spread out to the surroundings. They activated the seal and surrounded Chu Mu and Tu Qianjun. Tu Qianjun grabbed at the void with both hands. A blood-colored flame seemed to jump out from the void. It extended and turned into a huge blood-colored sword that Tu Qianjun grasped tightly with both hands. Spiritual Sword Blood Slaughtering Sword. Although it was only a peak low-grade spiritual sword, it was comparable to a normal mid-grade spiritual sword. With the spiritual sword in hand, Tu Qianjun didn't hesitate to attack. Streaks of blood-colored sword light tore through the void and slashed towards Chu Mu without any mercy. Chu Mu's figure was as graceful as the wind and as swift as lightning. In an instant, he shuttled through the streaks of blood-colored sword light. He brandished his sword with incomparable sharpness. With just one sword, Chu Mu broke through Tu Qianjun's attack. As expected of a star-rank monster, Tu Qianjun reacted quickly. He flipped his sword and immediately used another sword art. It was the blood-slaughtering hall's inherited sword art, blood-slaughtering sword art. The blood-colored sword light was dense and filled the surroundings. Each streak was astonishing, and its destructive power was unparalleled. Even though they were far away, the experts of the blood-slaughtering hall could feel the terrifying aura assaulting them. Young Master's blood-slaughtering sword art is so powerful. Bright Sun rank strength is too tyrannical. I've cultivated the blood-slaughtering sword art for more than 100 years. Young Master has only cultivated it for 10 years, but he has already surpassed me. Because he is the young Master, someone who will become a king in the future. With the strength of a Bright Sun rank, the might of the blood-slaughtering sword art was fully displayed. It was extremely tyrannical and filled with killing intent. The surroundings seemed to be filled with blood-colored light, turning into a sea of blood. The sharp sword light floated up and down in the sea of blood, surrounding Chu Mu. Chu Mu shuttled through the sea of blood, dodging each of Tu Qianjun's sword attacks. This was the difference in cultivation realm, and also the difference in strength. No matter how Tu Qianjun used the blood-slaughtering sword art, he couldn't injure Chu Mu in the slightest. Waning moon. Chu Mu raised his sword. The waning moon hung in the sky, sprinkling down white light like water. The sea of blood was imprisoned, and Tu Qianjun's figure instantly stopped moving. Even if it was only for an instant, it was enough. 15. The meteor fell from the sky, shattering the sea of blood and attacking Tu Qianjun. Tu Qianjun's figure was imprisoned, and he couldn't move. He could only watch as the meteor flew over. A terrifying aura rushed over and struck him, shattering him. He discovered that he couldn't block the sword's might. Young Master! The experts of the blood-slaughtering hall were shocked, and they all rushed over with their fastest speed. However, there was some distance between them, and distant water couldn't put out a nearby fire. The meteor instantly turned into a shadow, passing through Tu Qianjun's body and disappearing. Tu Qianjun wasn't injured at all. At the last moment, Chu Mu stopped his sword attack. To him, this was as easy as pie. Thank you for showing mercy. Tu Qianjun smiled bitterly. I originally thought that after my seclusion, my strength had increased and I would be able to compete with you. I didn't expect the difference to be even greater. It seems like the evil dragon hall's destruction was done by you, right? Chu Mu nodded, not denying it at all. When the experts of the blood-slaughtering hall heard this, they were all dumbfounded, as if they had been struck by lightning. This news was simply too shocking. It turned out that the evil dragon hall's destruction 2 years ago wasn't done by the sword demon sect master, Feng Wui, but by Chu Mu. Chu Mu's revenge. To be able to destroy the entire evil dragon hall by himself. His strength was definitely at the Bright Yang rank. In other words, 2 years ago, when the 6 stars were still in seclusion trying to break through to the Bright Yang rank, Chu Mu already had the strength of a Bright Yang rank sword saint. Now, it wasn't that hard to accept that young Master Tu Qianjun, who had the strength of a Bright Yang rank sword saint, had been defeated. The former leader of the 7 stars, the unparalleled sword star, truly lived up to his name. If Bai Chen knows that you're still alive, he'll definitely come looking for you. Tu Qianjun calmed himself down and smiled, however. His strength is only about the same as mine. He's not your opponent at all. Hearing this, Chu Mu only smiled and didn't say anything. In fact, even if the 6 stars joined forces, they might not be able to defeat Chu Mu. They might not even be Chu Mu's opponent. After the battle with Tu Qianjun, Chu Mu had further grasped his current strength. However, he still didn't know what his limits were. I need an even stronger opponent, Chu Mu said to himself, perhaps Sword Demon Feng Wui will be a true opponent. A so-called true opponent was someone whose strength was on par with him, or even a little stronger than him. They were powerful existences that he would have to fight with his full strength. However, right now, he was here to make a deal with Tu Qianjun. More accurately, he was here to make a deal with the blood-slaughtering hall. This deal was related to the cultivation of his saint body. It was very important. Chapter 1858. Young Master, do you know what level Chu Mu's strength has reached? A bright moon sword saint from the Slaughter Blood Hall asked. I'm not sure either. Tu Qianjun shook his head. He himself was also a bright young realm expert, but the gap between him and Chu Mu was very obvious. Therefore, he was not clear about Chu Mu's strength. Tell them the news, but don't tell them about my defeat. A mischievous smile appeared on Tu Qianjun's face. He believed that as long as the others knew that Chu Mu was not dead and had returned, they would definitely rush over and challenge him. At that time, they would taste the taste of defeat. Moreover, it would be the kind of defeat where there was a clear difference in strength. Sure enough, when the 5 great stars received the news from Tu Qianjun, their first reaction was disbelief, and then they were extremely shocked. Because Tu Qianjun had no reason to lie to them about this kind of thing. They immediately made arrangements and set out immediately, rushing towards Bloodbath City with the fastest speed possible. In the Manor's secret room, Chu Mu opened his palm, and 4 drops of Berserk Saint blood floated above his palm. These 4 drops of Berserk Saint blood were what Chu Mu had obtained from the Slaughter Blood Hall with the 4 evil dragon spiritual swords. Berserk Saint blood was more valuable than ancient Saint treasure blood, at least 10 times more. However, there was an obvious difference between the two. The main use of ancient Saint treasure blood was to stimulate one's Saint body's potential. Usually, it would only have an effect the first time it was used. The second time, it would only temper the Saint body to a lesser extent. The Berserk Saint blood was different. It didn't have the ability to stimulate one's potential. Its only use was to temper the Saint body. That was because the tempering process was extremely fast. It would bring great pain to the Saint body. One had to have a strong enough will to support it. That was how it got its name. If one couldn't endure it and fell unconscious, the Saint body would be injured by the Berserk energy. If one could endure it, they would receive an effective tempering. The value of each drop of Berserk Saint blood was extremely high. It was comparable to a mid-rank evil dragon spiritual sword. Chu Mu obtaining 4 drops of Berserk Saint blood was actually a great advantage. Berserk Sacred Blood. I wonder what level my sacred body can reach with these 4 drops, Chu Mu thought. The life force of a mid-stage level 8 Saint body was much stronger, and it was easy to regrow a limb. Therefore, it was very difficult to improve one's Saint body by a small level. Although the power of the Berserk Saint blood was amazing, Chu Mu was not sure if it could refine his Saint body from mid-stage level 8 to late-stage level 8. The cultivation of the path of the sacred body was 10 times more difficult than the path of origin power. Chu Mu put away the 3 drops of Berserk Saint blood, opened his mouth, and swallowed the first drop. He immediately felt a terrifying heat spreading in his mouth. It was as if he had just swallowed a piece of iron that had just been fished out of lava. Chu Mu's face instantly turned red. The Berserk Saint blood entered his body through his esophagus, and his entire esophagus seemed to be burning. Heat began to spread from Chu Mu's body, rising in spirals, and condensing into a dense white color above his head. When the Berserk Sacred blood entered his stomach, a tyrannical and berserk energy began to diffuse, attacking Chu Mu's entire body. It caused Chu Mu to feel as if a flood of magma was unceasingly attacking his body. Everywhere it passed, his internal organs, meridians, and bones would all be burned. An indescribable pain filled his entire body, causing even his soul to tremble. This kind of pain was more than 10 times more intense than when he had first consumed the ancient Saint blood. Chu Mu's body subconsciously trembled, and he clenched his teeth, not letting out any sound. The veins on his face bulged, and his face was blood-red, looking very sinister. Steaming hot air constantly poured out of Chu Mu's body and filled the surroundings. Very quickly, it filled the entire secret room. The terrifyingly high temperature could instantly melt steel into liquid and then into gas. While Chu Mu was in seclusion to consume the berserk saint blood, the 6 great stars' art had arrived at Chu Mu's manor. Facing the famous 6 great stars, Lin Biruo, Elder Waning Moon, and Boulder were all very nervous. There was no way around it, as they knew who the person in front of them was. However, when they thought of Chu Mu, their nervousness immediately lessened. It had to be known that their young master was previously known as the head of the 7 great stars, the unparalleled sword star. The young master is in seclusion, replied Lin Biruo. Seclusion? They couldn't help feeling disappointed. They had rushed here just to see Chu Mu and then issue a challenge. Who would have thought that Chu Mu would be in seclusion? This wasn't the right time. It seems that Chu Mu is refining the berserk saint blood. It will probably take more than a month to refine all 4 drops of berserk saint blood, said Tu Qianjun. We came at the wrong time. We can only go back first. The others sighed. At this time, they couldn't leave their base for too long in case something unexpected happened. Tu Qianjun also felt regretful that he couldn't let these guys have a taste of being easily defeated. However, he was also very clear about the current situation. The 6 great stars turned around and left. Apart from Tu Qianjun, the other 5 also quickly left Bloodbath City and returned to their respective bases. A few days later, Chu Mu successfully refined the first drop of berserk saint blood. He didn't refine the second drop immediately. That kind of pain was simply a kind of torture. He had to rely on his own willpower to withstand it. Therefore, he needed to rest for some time and adjust his body's condition. Chu Mu stretched his body. He could feel that his saint body had indeed strengthened significantly after refining the first drop of berserk saint blood. However, there was still a big gap between him and the later stage of LV8. According to the current progress, 4 drops of berserk saint blood should be enough for my saint body to reach the later stage of LV8. Chu Mu thought to himself. After resting for a day, he took out the second drop of berserk saint blood and consumed it. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. The Sword Demon sect made a big move. Among the 5 cities, a total of 10 forces were continuously destroyed. These 10 forces were all powerful forces with Dark Star Sword Saints. However, they didn't have the slightest ability to resist. In an extremely short period of time, they were all slaughtered. The primordial spirits of those who were killed were all devoured. With the young masters in charge, the 5 cities reacted quickly. Moreover, the young masters of the 5 great stars were the fastest. They intercepted the culprits at the edge of the cities and engaged in an intense battle. Kill! By Chen's murderous aura sword. His silver-white hair danced in the wind. His silver sword slashed out streaks of sharp silver-white sword light that pierced through the void. His opponent was also a human. As expected of a star-rank monster. You are indeed powerful. With a strange laugh, a tyrannical aura erupted from this person's body and swept out. In the raging storm, the bones all over his body crackled as if they were breaking. A hideous smile spread across his face. His pupils rapidly changed. They turned vertical and became cold and emotionless. Strange patterns appeared on his face. His body became taller and stronger. Barbs protruded from his shoulders. His arms elongated and became thicker. Bayonets protruded from his elbows. His arms were covered with dark green scales and were filled with terrifying power. In the blink of an eye, this person's appearance changed drastically. He was like a monster. The Sword Demon sect's disciple demonified. This demonification was completely demonified. It was the highest level of demonification. It was also the most tyrannical demonification. It was called complete demonification. Under the complete demonification, the sword demon sect's disciple, who was originally only at the bright moon rank, suddenly became stronger. He broke through the limit of the bright moon rank and reached the bright yang rank. Bai Chen's heart trembled. Sword demon sect, other than sword demon Fengwui, actually had other bright yang rank experts. To the Bright Yang Alliance, this was extremely bad news. After the complete demonification, his battle strength increased drastically. He launched an extremely fierce counterattack. His arms that were filled with power burst out. He waved his sharp claws and attacked Bai Chen crazily. Like Bai Chen, in the other 4 cities, Tu Qianjun, Long Shi, Yan Qingyao and Heiju had also encountered powerful opponents who had completely transformed into monsters. An incomparably intense battle unfolded. This was a battle between Bright Yang Realm experts. Without the strength of a Bright Yang Realm expert, it was impossible for anyone to interfere. The guards of the 5 city lord residences immediately dispersed the surrounding crowd and laid down layers of seals, doing their best to prevent the terrifying shockwaves from spreading. What kind of monster is that? He can actually fight with young master like this. Terrifying, it's really too terrifying. The sword demon sect actually has such an expert. The incomparably intense battle caused great damage to the surroundings. Countless city walls collapsed, the ground cracked, and sword marks and claw marks crisscrossed everywhere. It was a shocking sight. The 5 young masters had no intention of holding back at all. They used all of their strength to display their sword arts, wanting to kill the other party. They were very clear that the sword demon sect was originally supported by the sword demon Fengwui alone. But now, other than the sword demon Fengwui, there was actually a second Bright Yang expert. This would undoubtedly greatly increase the sword demon sect's strength. They still didn't know that a similar situation had occurred in the other 4 cities. No matter what, if they killed their opponent, it would greatly weaken the sword demon sect's strength, which would be beneficial to the Bright Yang Alliance. The terrifying claws brought about a storm that destroyed everything. The sword demon sect's disciple took the opportunity to retreat. With a flash, he quickly left. Ha 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 ha. The strength of the 6 great stars is only SOSO. The next time we meet, this heavenly demon will tear you to pieces. Tremble! My sword demon sect has 12 heavenly demons. Your doomsday is coming. After a fierce battle, the sword demon sect's disciples of the 5 cities retreated one after another. They did not have the slightest intention of fighting to the death. As they left behind some information. Heavenly demons. 12 heavenly demons. The information they left behind was very little and very simple, but it shocked the 5 young masters. Could it be that within the sword demon sect, there were a total of 12 such experts? Chapter 1859. The guards of the 5 Castellan mansions were cleaning up the collapsed city walls and flattening the ground. Many people were watching from afar, discussing with a serious expression. After the 6 stars came out of seclusion, the sword demon sect had been quiet for a while. But now they suddenly burst out and destroyed 1 or 2 forces in the 5 Castellans, causing a certain amount of damage to the 5 Castellans. Especially the last words left by the sword demon sect's disciple, who claimed to be a heaven demon. He didn't hide it at all, as if he did it on purpose, allowing many people to hear it. 12 heaven demons. In the hall of the Slaughter Blood Mansion, Tu Qianjun sat on the main seat. Below him were the Dark Star and Bright Moon experts of the Slaughter Blood Mansion. Heaven demons! Tu Qianjun whispered with a fearful expression. Young master, I don't think it's 12. Maybe it's just 1. They purposely said 12 to confuse us and suppress our morale. A Bright Moon sword saint stood up and said. Such analysis wasn't without reason. Right now, the 5 city lord mansions were the last hope of many cultivators. The Bright Yang Alliance was their only backing and support. If everyone panicked and wavered, It would definitely destroy the stable situation that the Bright Young Alliance had just formed and disintegrate the alliance from the inside. How could they fight against the Sword Demon sect then? Send someone to investigate and verify if the 12 heaven demons are real, Tu Qianjun said. It would be best if they weren't, but if they were, then the problem would be serious. The investigation of the news was unexpectedly smooth, and the result was shocking. The 12 heaven demons were real. The Sword Demon sect didn't hide it at all. The name of the 12 heavenly demons quickly spread throughout the 5 great cities. Even more cultivators knew about it. What had happened in the 5 great cities was also known to each other. For a moment, the members of the Bright Sun Alliance all had extremely grave expressions. Perhaps the name of the 12 heavenly demons was just a smokescreen that the Sword Demon sect had purposely released. However, it was a fact that 5 of the 12 heavenly demons had been attacked by a single heavenly demon at the same time, and the 5 young masters were unable to gain the upper hand in the battle. In other words, there were at least 5 of the 12 heavenly demons that possessed the strength of a Bright Yang after transforming. The Sword Demon sect, including the Sword Demon Fengwui, has at least 6 Bright Sun Realm Sword Saints. This kind of news was a huge shock to anyone. Bright Yang Sword Saints were extremely rare, and it was very difficult to become one. Even after many years of accumulation in the 5 city lords' manors, each of them only had 3 Sword Saints. One of them had even gone into seclusion 1,000 years ago, and it was unknown whether he was still alive or not. Thus, each of the manors could only have 2 Bright Yang Sword Saints, while the Sword Devil sect had at least 6. Such a difference was too obvious. If what the 12 heavenly demons said was true, then the Sword Demon sect would have 13 Bright Yang realm experts, far surpassing any of the 5 major city lords' manors. Even if the Flowing Light Army was included, they could only barely be on par with them. How could the Sword Demon sect be so powerful? This was hard to believe. After the disciples of the Sword Demon sect went through the demon transforming pool, they all had the ability to devour primordial spirits to increase their cultivation and strength. As long as they could devour primordial spirits, their strength would increase rapidly without any side effects. It was this ability that allowed experts to continuously appear in the Sword Demon sect, creating the 12 heavenly demons. Of course, this was also the result of Feng Wui's efforts in nurturing them. After all, Feng Wui's ambition did not stop there. He wanted to rule the entire land of exile and become the strongest king there. Thus, apart from having enough strength, he also needed to have enough powerful subordinate. The 12 heavenly demons were the strongest fighters he had nurtured. Following that, the Sword Demon sect sent out a message. Those who surrendered would not be killed, and those who did not surrender would be exterminated. The news was confirmed, and the 5 city lords' manors were unable to successfully seal it off. Immediately, everyone was in a state of panic and chaos. The Bright Young Alliance that had just been formed not long ago showed signs of collapsing. Some forces even showed signs of wanting to leave the alliance. Sword Demon Feng Wui and the 12 heavenly demons made a total of 13 Bright Yang realm experts. Who could oppose such a Sword Demon sect, unless the 7 kings returned? However, no one knew where the 7 kings went, and there was no news of them. Perhaps, before the 7 kings returned, they would all be exterminated by the Sword Demon sect, and their primordial spirits would all become food for the Sword Demon sect's disciples to increase their strength. Soon, the first sect announced their departure from the Bright Young Alliance, and within a few days, they announced their allegiance to the Sword Demon sect. The number 1 sect's departure and betrayal had a huge impact on the entire Bright Young Alliance. The Bright Young Alliance, which was already on the verge of collapse, suddenly showed signs of collapsing. Currently, the gap between the Sword Demon sect and the Bright Sun Alliance was very obvious. Once the battle started, the outcome of the battle could be predicted. According to the Sword Demon sect's way of doing things, only death awaited those who didn't surrender, and those who didn't surrender would be completely annihilated. We can't wait any longer. The longer we delay, the worse the situation will be for us. Tu Qianjun frowned and said, "This is what the Sword Demon sect wants. They want to break our alliance and morale step by step. If we delay any longer, the Bright Young Alliance will collapse, and the people's hearts will be scattered, and it will be hard to resist. If we don't delay any longer, we can only take the initiative to attack." Bai Chen seemed to be talking to himself. No matter what, the current situation is not good for us. Therefore, we can only take the initiative to attack and exterminate the Sword Demon sect. He Ju's eyes flickered with killing intent. He hated the Sword Demon sect to the core. "Let's do it." Feng Facia sighed lightly. "It's not that we can't do it, but with our current strength, it's not enough." Yan Qingya said, her voice like jade pearls, "The 5 city lord mansions and the Flowing Light Army only have a total of 12 bright young sword saints. If it's true that there are 12 heavenly beasts, we still lack 1 bright young sword saint. Moreover, Sword Demon Feng Wui's strength." Although she did not finish her sentence, it was very clear that Sword Demon Feng Wui's strength was extremely powerful. They were no match for him in a one-on-one battle. If it was true that there were 12 heavenly beasts, then their 12 bright young sword saints could only deal with 12 heavenly beasts. There was still the strongest Sword Demon Feng Wui. If Sword Demon Feng Wui did not die, killing the 12 heavenly beasts would not be of much use. If Feng Wui could cultivate the first batch, then he could cultivate the second batch. "Let's invite Chu Mu," Tu Qianjun said. Everyone looked at him, and he explained, "Remember when I told you about Chu Mu's return? I have already fought with him." "What was the result?" Everyone's eyes lit up as they hurriedly asked. "I was no match for him." Tu Qianjun smiled bitterly. "Chu Mu's talent is outstanding. It's not impossible for him to defeat us." Yan Qingya said. "That's right, but that's not the main point." Tu Qianjun smiled bitterly again. "The main point is that I was easily defeated. I have a feeling that if Chu Mu is willing, he might not even need 3 sword strikes to defeat me." "What?" Everyone was shocked. Defeating Tu Qianjun without 3 sword strikes meant that he could defeat them without 3 sword strike. This gap was too big. Now that Chu Mu has refined 4 drops of Berserk sacred blood, his strength must be even more powerful. Tu Qianjun added. "It seems that the only one who can defeat Sword Demon Feng Wui is Chu Mu. Let's go. He should be coming out of seclusion now. We will personally invite him to fight." Bai Chen stood up and walked outside. The 4th drop of Berserk sacred blood was refined by Chu Mu. The entire seclusion room was filled with an incomparably dense white smoke. The terrifyingly high temperature could easily melt refined steel into molten iron. Shortly after, the sound of breathing could be heard. It was like a roaring hurricane, sweeping the white smoke in the secret chamber. It gradually condensed into a ball and exploded with a bang, dissipating into nothingness. "Finally, it's all refined," Chu Mu said softly. Inside his body, a powerful force was surging like a dragon. When it burst out, it could destroy mountains and rivers. Late rank 8 peak. Right now, his saint body was much stronger than when he was at mid-rank 8. It's a pity. If I had 2 more drops of Berserk sacred blood, I would definitely be able to raise my saint body to peak rank 8. Chu Mu thought. However, the Berserk sacred blood was extremely precious. It was a specialty of the Slaughtering Blood Hall. Even the Slaughtering Blood Hall did not have that much. Being able to trade 4 drops to Chu Mu was already a huge amount. My cultivation. Just as he got up, Chu Mu realized that his saint body rank had increased. His Yuan power cultivation had also broken through unknowingly, rising from the initial stage of Eternal Ninth Heavens to the middle stage of Eternal Ninth Heavens. Chu Mu's strength had increased significantly with the combination of his middle stage Immemorial Ninth Heaven, Yuan energy and late stage 8th rank saint body. Originally, he did not know the limits of his strength. Now, he was even more uncertain. He could only confirm that he had not reached the level of a peerless expert. However, he did not know how big the gap was. With the increase in his strength, Chu Mu was even more eager to fight with a strong opponent. Pushing open the door of the secret chamber, Chu Mu walked out and saw the waning moon sword saint standing outside. "Young master, you're out." The waning moon sword saint hurriedly bowed respectfully and said, "The 6 great stars came to look for you once." Looking at their expressions, they seemed to be anxious. Chu Mu nodded his head and strode outside. The 6 great stars had come together and looked anxious. They must not be here to reminisce about the past. Instead, they must be here for something. "Brother Chu, you're finally out." Tu Qianjun hurriedly greeted Chu Mu when he saw him. Then, his expression changed and he said, "Brother Chu, your cultivation. I just broke through." Chu Mu said, "It was easier to tell one's Yuan Qi cultivation, but it was harder to tell one's saint body cultivation. With the increase in your cultivation, you will become stronger and have a greater chance of success." Bai Chen said. "What chance?" Chu Mu was surprised. Chapter 1860. In the hall of the manor, the 7 of them were seated. The little maid Lin Biruo naturally served them tea. "So, you're preparing to attack the Sword Demon sect?" Chu Mu said with a smile. "That's right. With the current situation, we can't delay any longer. I'm afraid that's what Feng Wui is thinking. He's forcing us to take the initiative. Whether we delay or take the initiative, it's not a good thing for our side. After all, the time wasn't ripe yet. If they rashly attacked the Sword Demon sect's base, they would undoubtedly enter the enemy's camp. They wouldn't have the advantage in terms of terrain. If the Sword Demon sect made arrangements, it would be even more disadvantageous for the Bright Sun Alliance. However, the current situation couldn't be delayed any longer. Otherwise, the Bright Sun Alliance would collapse without the Sword Demon sect's help. There would be endless internal conflicts, and most of them would be biased towards the Sword Demon sect. "Since that's the case, let's do it," said Chu Mu. His casual tone caused the 6 great stars to be astonished. "Brother Chu, you agree?" Tu Qianjun repeated. Originally, they thought it wouldn't be so easy to ask Chu Mu to fight. After all, this wasn't a competition, but a battle of life and death. Moreover, it wasn't a normal battle of life and death. Once they died in battle, their soul would be devoured by the opponent and they would die completely. Therefore, it was extremely dangerous. They had prepared a speech to persuade Chu Mu, but they didn't expect that their preparations wouldn't be needed. "How can I refuse such a thing?" Chu Mu said with a smile. If he took the opportunity to make some requests, the 6 stars would certainly agree. However, Chu Mu didn't do so because he disdained it. "Brother Chu, how strong are you now?" Heiju asked. This was the main point. If Chu Mu wasn't strong enough to fight against Feng Wui, he would only be killed by Feng Wui. Taking the initiative to attack would be a joke. "I don't know," Chu Mu said honestly. "We don't know how strong the sword demon Feng Wui is. Why don't the 6 of us join forces to fight against Brother Chu?" Longshi said. 6 people working together? Tu Qianjun and the others exchanged glances before looking at Chu Mu. In the past, they were far stronger than Chu Mu. But now, the 6 of them had to join forces to fight against Chu Mu alone. The changes in this situation were indescribable. However, they still needed Chu Mu's approval. Sure. Chu Mu agreed without hesitation. He hoped that the alliance of the 6 great stars would bring him enough pressure and make him realize the limits of his strength. When Lin Biruo, who was serving him, heard this, she was extremely excited. The 6 great stars teaming up against the unparalleled Sword Star naturally would not be carried out in this small manner. Otherwise, the aftermath of their battle would be enough to completely destroy the entire manor. Lin Biruo, Wan Yue, and Pan Yen also came to watch the battle. In addition, there were many experts from the Slaughtering Blood Manor, as well as the experts from the 5 great stars. When they knew that the 6 great stars were teaming up to fight against Chu Mu, they were incomparably shocked. The 6 great stars stood in a circle, and Chu Mu was in the middle of the circle. Brother Chu, back then, when we fought to a draw on Dragon Head Mountain, I knew that we would have to fight again in the future. However, I did not expect that after more than 10 years, the difference in strength between us has become so obvious. You need the 6 of us to work together, said Bai Chen. His indifferent tone was somewhat whining. Hearing Bai Chen's words, Tu Qianjun and the others felt helpless. Who would have thought that this day would come? Chu Mu only smiled and didn't say anything. Bai Chen had only said a few words. Very quickly, he eliminated all distracting thoughts and condensed his aura. His sword origin was activated, and his powerful aura was like a sword. The spiritual sword pointed directly at Chu Mu, and a shocking sharpness instantly locked onto Chu Mu. His right hand grasped the air, and the blazing glory spiritual sword appeared in his hand. Sword chi blazed. Everyone's eyes widened because they knew that an intense battle was about to begin. Swish, swish, swish. Sword light filled the air. Silver-white sharp sword light, blood-red tyrannical sword light, black tyrannical sword light, golden sharp sword light, cyan erratic sword light, and fierce black sword light. 6 sword light, with different auras and trajectories, all shot towards Chu Mu. The moment they attacked, they used their respective sword arts, such as the silver sword art and blood slaughter sword art. They didn't hold back at all. Chu Mu had seen the silver sword art and blood slaughter sword art before, but it was his first time coming into contact with the other 4 sword arts. Therefore, he didn't use his full strength to counterattack, but used the ghost dragon perplexing track to quickly dodge. His figure was unpredictable, and he used the 13 meteor strikes to resist. The grade of the 13 meteor strikes was obviously not as high as the silver sword art, but it was able to resist and not be at a disadvantage. This showed how amazing Chu Mu's attainments in sword arts were. At the same time, it also showed how powerful Chu Mu was. Alone and with one sword, Chu Mu was surrounded by the 6 stars and completely resisted their attacks. The 13 meteor strikes seemed to have the help of God, blocking all the attacks from the 6 stars. About half an hour later, Chu Mu's sword trembled and turned into 6 powerful meteors, shooting towards the 6 stars. The speed of the sword was extremely fast, and there was no way to dodge. They could only take it head-on. The impact of the tyrannical power directly repelled the 6 great stars. Everyone, it's better to bring out more strength, Chu Mu said with a faint smile. The 6 stars were indeed very powerful, and each of them had the strength of a bright young sword saint. The 6 of them working together could increase their strength by more than 6 times. However, it was still not enough for Chu Mu. The pressure was just a little bit. The 6 stars' expressions were solemn. Just now, they didn't hold back and used their full strength to execute the sword arts they had learned. However, they still couldn't do anything to Chu Mu. It could be seen that Chu Mu's strength had exceeded their imagination. In that case, Brother Chu, I will use the Black Demon Hall's secret sword art. Its power is much stronger than the Black Demon sword art, and it's a killing move. You have to be careful. Black Ju said. Brother Chu, I will use the Blood Slaughter Hall's secret sword art. Tu Qianjun also said with a solemn expression. Although the others didn't say anything, their expressions were solemn. Clearly, they were also planning to use their trump card. Secret sword art. The 3 saints sects had the 3 saints secret sword art. That was the foundation of the sect. When Long Yunkong used it, even though he had barely reached the entry level, Chu Mu had deduced some information from it. Every sword of the 3 saints' secret sword art was a killing move. The power of the first sword, the human saint true image sword, was comparable to the last 3 swords of the silver sword art. Then, the last 2 swords would be even more powerful. As a powerful force that was above the 3 saint sects, the 5 city governors' mansions naturally had corresponding fatal sword skills passed down. Moreover, they were even more powerful than the three saints' secret swords of the three saints' sects. Because of this, Chu Mu was looking forward to seeing how powerful the secret sword arts of the five city lord mansions were. The blood-red light on Tu Qianjuan's body became denser. In the blink of an eye, it had spread to the blood-slaughter sword in his hand. The blood-slaughter sword was buzzing, and a terrifying killing intent condensed within. It was getting denser and denser. On Bai Chen's silver sword, the silver light flowed like water, but it also had an amazing sharpness. It was as if there was nothing in the world that could withstand the cutting of this sword. On He Ju's black demon sword, the black light was as dense as ink. It was almost solidified, but a terrifying aura was being nurtured within it. Long Shi raised the long sword in his hand. Holding the hilt with both hands, a strong sword will gushed out. Vaguely, one could hear the sorrowful cry of a dragon. This sword could slay a dragon. Feng Feishi's sword flashed with golden light. It seemed to be still, but in fact, it was moving at an amazing speed. When this sword was used, the sword's speed must have reached an amazing extreme. It was impossible to predict and catch, and it had an amazing penetrating power. Finally, it was Yan Qingya's sword. The cyan sword light made people feel absent-minded and unable to concentrate. They would be greatly affected and killed. The secret sword arts of the five city lord mansions and the flowing light army, the 6 secret swords, were displayed. Being in it, Chu Mu suddenly felt great pressure. This pressure made him a little excited. It's still not enough, Chu Mu said softly. Yes, the aura of the 6 star lords using their secret swords did indeed make Chu Mu feel pressured. However, this level of pressure was still not enough. Chu Mu was a little troubled. Where was his limit now? As an expert, it was really depressing to not know the limit of one's strength. Unfortunately, the opponent was not strong enough. Without needing to use both swords, Chu Mu only held the Blazing Brilliance spiritual sword. Facing the 6 star lords' secret swords. Thousand Army Slaughter. Silver-white Death Sword. Black Demon Slaughter. Dragon Slayer Style. Light Extreme Sword Strike. Qinyan Misty Rain. In an instant, the 6 stars all drew their swords and displayed the secret sword skills that they had cultivated. The blood-red sword light pierced through the air. Mountains of corpses and seas of blood, bones floated in the air. One sword could slaughter thousands of soldiers. Killing intent soared to the sky. The silver-white sword light carried with it the intent to kill. It was unstoppable and unavoidable. It directly cut through the void and tore it apart. The black sword light carried with it the intent to kill. Within it, it seemed to contain the terrifying power of a furnace that could destroy all life. The black sword light slashed down. Under the sword light, the shadow of an azure dragon seemed to appear. It struggled under the sword light and was cut in half. The golden sword light was extremely condensed. It was only the size of a pinky finger, but it was extremely sharp. The void was as fragile as paper and was easily pierced through. Furthermore, the speed of the sword light was extremely fast, far surpassing the others. In an instant it pierced towards Chu Mu's head. Finally, it was the green-colored misty sword light. It was neither fast nor slow. It spread out like a light rain, filling up an area. Even the power of the soul would be affected. Traces of fine but extremely condensed sword light were hidden within. The killing intent was restrained. Chapter 1861. With Chu Mu as the center, he faced the 6 terrifying sword light attack. Waning Moon. With a swing of his sword, the sword light turned into a waning moon hanging in the sky. Its faint light shone down and covered the entire area. The 6 stars and their sword light were all sealed in an instant. However, Waning Moon's level was far below the 6 secret swords. It was easily broken through. This little bit of time was more than enough. Chu Mu's figure split into 6, becoming 6 swords that pierced towards the 6 stars. His speed was unfathomable. Stopping there, Chu Mu's figure disappeared and appeared outside the encirclement of the 6 stars. This scene was inconceivable in the eyes of others. However, the 6 stars were the ones who felt it the most. In an instant, they were unable to move under the moonlight. Although they managed to break free, they were still struck by Chu Mu's swords. If Chu Mu wanted to, they would have been injured or even killed. The 6 stars' eyes were filled with complicated light. The 6 of them had worked together but still lost. Moreover, they had lost thoroughly. This meant that Chu Mu's strength was far above theirs. "Brother Chu, I'm convinced." Bai Chen sighed softly and said with a serious expression, "I'm convinced." He Ju, who had always been arrogant, also sighed. Brother Chu's strength should be enough to deal with sword demon Feng Wui. Feng Facia said, "In that case, Brother Chu will deal with Feng Wui while we deal with the 12 heavenly demons. We'll kill the upper echelon of the sword demon sect in one fell swoop and destroy the sword demon sect. This is a big matter. Let's go to the conference hall," Tu Qianjun said. The news was secretly spread, and the other bright young experts of the 5 city lords' manors and the flowing light army were summoned. This secret operation was naturally not known by others. Soon, 13 bright young sword saints were gathered. When the 6 bright young sword saints, who had rushed over, learned that Chu Mu had defeated the combined forces of 6 great stars, they were all extremely shocked and impressed. "Since we've already decided to take the initiative to attack, I think we should use the elite troop strategy. The 13 of us will directly charge into the Sword Devil sect," Tu Qianjun said. A blood-red light flickered in his eyes as killing intent condensed. Once there were too many people, their movements would be affected. The disparity in strength would also affect the battle situation. With only 13 bright young sword saints, they could come and go like the wind, as fast as lightning. Furthermore, they were powerful enough to execute a decapitation operation. As long as they eliminated Sword Demon Feng Wui and the 12 heavenly demons, the Sword Demon School would be finished. That makes sense. Moreover, I think we should spread the news that half a month later, the Bright Sun Alliance will take the initiative to attack the Sword Demon sect in a large scale and have a decisive battle. Moreover, we should order people to mobilize the Alliance's experts and form an army to be on standby. He Ju chuckled. The 13 of us, on the other hand, will take them by surprise. Everyone expressed their opinions and finally reached a consensus. He immediately issued an order to mobilize the experts of the Bright Sun Alliance to form an army to fight the Sword Demon sect to the death. Once the order was issued, the originally unstable Bright Sun Alliance temporarily stabilized, and the experts all gathered. 15 days later, the Bright Sun Alliance's expert army would be mobilized. This news was spread out without any concealment. As soon as this news came out, it immediately caused people to smell the scent of a coming storm. A desolate atmosphere pervaded everywhere. The passers-by hurried, and their expressions were either excited or fearful, and so on and so forth. Finally, the decisive battle is coming. The Bright Sun Alliance will definitely destroy the Sword Demon sect. Let's hope so. A decisive battle to the death? Then let's do it. After Sword Demon Feng Wui received the news, he immediately smiled. Whether or not I can become a king warrior will depend on this. To him, the large-scale attack of the Bright Young Alliance's experts was extremely beneficial. At that time, he would be able to absorb even more primordial spirits of experts. In the end, the quantitative change would lead to a qualitative change. Finally, he would be able to break through his current shackles and reach a higher level. That was the level of a king. As long as he reached the level of a king warrior, he wouldn't be afraid even if the 7 kings appeared. Feng Wui didn't think about whether this was a scheme or not, because his nature wasn't that of a human, but a demon of the secret realm. His thoughts weren't that complicated, and he didn't have as many schemes as humans. Mobilizing the 12 heavenly demons to disturb people's hearts was already the limit of what he could think of. The codename for this operation is Beheading Demons. Chu Mu said, "This time we can only succeed, not fail." Let's go. Immediately, under Chu Mu's lead, the 13 bright sun sword saints secretly moved out, heading towards the sword demon sect's headquarters. The strength of the 6 great stars was about the same. Thus, it was very difficult for them to obey each other. Even if it was a joint operation, they could temporarily obey, but they wouldn't be so satisfied in their hearts. In fact, the strength of the 12 bright sun sword saints of the 5 city lord residences and the flowing light army were about the same. Only Chu Mu was the most tyrannical, easily defeating the 6 great stars. Strength reigned supreme, so they all followed Chu Mu's lead. Chu Mu didn't decline, and everyone decided on a codename, Beheading Demons, which meant to kill sword demon Feng Wui and the 12 heavenly demons. Apart from the 13 of them, no one else knew about their operation. Everyone thought that they were still in the slaughtering blood hall, preparing for the attack half a month later. The speed of the bright sun sword saints was extremely fast. They rapidly left the slaughtering blood city, heading straight for the sword demon sect's headquarters. The main camp of the sword demon sect was located in one of the camp. That camp had been completely massacred by the sword demons and taken over. It was quite a distance away from the 5 cities, but with the speed of a bright young sword saint, it wouldn't take more than 10 days to reach it. What a powerful demonic aura! Outside the sword demon sect's headquarters, Chu Mu and the rest of the 13 first hid themselves after arriving. They were astonished when they sensed the aura coming from the sword demon sect's headquarters. After the disciples of the sword demon sect passed through the demon transformation pool, their aura would change, carrying a trace of a peculiar aura. This kind of aura was called demonic aura. As the headquarters, there were many disciples of the sword demon sect gathered. Among them, there were quite a few experts of the 3 great battle forces. Even if each of them only had a trace of demonic aura, when gathered together, it was still extremely shocking. The enormous demonic aura lingered in the surroundings of the sword demon sect's headquarters. Vaguely, a strange green chi pervaded the air like smoke. It didn't disperse no matter how strong the wind blew. These demonic auras didn't completely fuse together. Therefore, Chu Mu and the rest of the 13 could clearly sense the traces. Among them, 13 were the most powerful. There were also dozens of demonic auras that were extremely powerful. The most powerful demonic aura is probably the demonic aura of the sword demon, Feng Wui. The 12 demonic auras that are second only to Feng Wui have all reached the limit of the bright moon realm. It's very likely that they are the demonic auras of the 12 heavenly demons. Once they completely transform, they will possess the strength of the bright sun realm. Let's try to kill the 12 heavenly monsters before they transform. The 12 heavenly demons that didn't transform would only possess the strength of the peak of the bright moon realm. No matter how powerful they were, they wouldn't be a match for a bright sun sword saint. Perhaps a single sword strike would be enough to kill them, but once they successfully transform, they would immediately possess the strength of a bright sun sword saint. They would definitely be caught in an intense battle. Chu Mu and the rest of the 13 didn't rush into action. Instead, they continued to wait and observe. The 12 heavenly demons are very close to the sword demon, Feng Wui. It won't be easy to kill them in one move. The exact location of the 12 heavenly demons was accurately sensed by the group. They were almost connected together. I'll deal with Feng Wui. You guys choose one person each and kill them with lightning speed. Chu Mu transmitted with his divine soul. All right. After everyone chose their targets, they continued to conceal their auras and sneaked into the sword demon sect's main camp. With their strength as bright sun sword saints, it would be hard to discover them if they deliberately concealed themselves. However, the closer they got to their targets, the more careful they had to be. If they were discovered, the ambush would have failed, and they would have to fight head-on. Close. Just then, an extremely powerful aura that carried a shocking demonic aura erupted in an instant. It spread out and engulfed the entire camp, covering it completely. It was too sudden and too fast. Even though Chu Mu and the rest tried their best to conceal their auras, that boundless demonic aura swept past their bodies. An icy feeling made their bodies involuntarily shiver. Chu Mu and the rest's expression changed slightly. They had a bad feeling. Shortly after, a tyrannical demonic aura erupted and soared into the sky. There were a total of 13 auras. They were discovered. That aura just now was the one released by the sword demon, Feng Wui. At his level, he had a certain level of perception towards danger. He felt that it was a little strange, so he released his aura and covered the entire camp to investigate. He didn't expect to find something. There were a total of 13 people, and one of them had an extremely obscure aura that was almost impossible to detect. These 13 people were definitely not disciples of the Sword Demon sect, but outsiders. Although their auras were concealed, they were extremely powerful. In an instant, Sword Demon Feng Wui understood. Since Sword Demon Feng Wui had discovered Chu Mu and the rest, the 12 heavenly demons were naturally notified. They immediately transformed into demonic auras and erupted with bright yang rank auras. Shortly after, the 13 figures appeared one after another, alarming the disciples of the Sword Demon sect in the camp. Intruders! 13. After the 3 great powerhouses of the Sword Demon sect appeared, they also saw Chu Mu and the rest. After all, although they had restrained their auras and auras, they couldn't completely hide their figures. Kill. Since they had been discovered, there was no need to hide anymore. They directly erupted with tyrannical auras and soared intense sword into the sky. It was as if a heavenly sword was hovering in the sky with unparalleled killing intent. Exploding with power and speed, the 13 of them directly attacked Sword Demon Feng Wui and the 12 heavenly demons. Kill them! The 3 great powerhouses of the Sword Demon sect transformed into demonic auras, and their strength increased. They unsheathed their swords and attacked Chu Mu and the rest. However, even if their strength had increased after demonic auras, they had only reached the limits of the bright moon rank at most. There was still a clear gap between them and the bright yang rank. Chapter 1862. Like flowing light, they were extremely fast. Everything that stood in their way didn't seem to exist in their eyes. Chu Mu locked onto the leader of the 13 people. His powerful demonic chi was as dazzling as the blazing sun. A powerful and sharp aura emerged from Chu Mu's body, locking onto him and confronting him. In the blink of an eye, all the sword light missed. Immediately after, the experts of the Sword Demon sect were stunned, as if they had been struck by lightning. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. One by one, they were torn apart, their primordial spirits shattered and dissipated. Like the flow of time and space, Chu Mu appeared in front of Sword Demon Feng Wui in an instant. The blazing brilliance spiritual sword and the eternal spiritual sword were held in his hands, crossing each other. The sword light was deeply imprinted in the void, blazing and resplendent. Feng Wui was clad in cyan armor. His pupils weren't black, but cyan. They emitted a strange cyan light as he stared at Chu Mu. When Chu Mu appeared in front of him, as if he had teleported, a sinister smile appeared on his face. Facing Chu Mu's blazing cross sword light, Feng Wui flicked his finger. The cyan light shattered the void, hitting the center of the cross sword light. The cross sword light paused for a moment, then shattered inch by inch. When it arrived in front of Feng Wui, it completely shattered, as if it had turned into smoke, disappearing into nothingness. This sword wasn't Chu Mu's full strength. Being shattered by Feng Wui's finger didn't shock Chu Mu. It seemed to be within reason. The 2 swords flashed, and the sword light became endless. Then, it divided into 2 rays, slashing down from different angles. These 2 rays of sword light weren't dazzling nor sharp. They looked very ordinary and didn't have the slightest bit of power. Feng Wui's eyes flashed with a trace of seriousness. When one's strength reached Chu Mu's level, a casual sword strike would contain astonishing power. Usually, the stronger the power, the more intense the light and the more astonishing the aura. However, as the saying goes, when things reach an extreme, they will move in the opposite direction. Chu Mu's 2 swords had reached the pinnacle of his basic swordsmanship, and had also reached a level that other swordsmen could not reach. Feng Wui asked himself, and he knew that his swordsmanship had not reached such a level. However, it didn't mean that one would be powerful just because they were skilled in swordsmanship. Swordsmanship was only a part of one's strength and not everything. He raised his hand and chopped down. A wisp of green demonic sword light slashed towards Chu Mu with an extremely tragic momentum. In the face of Chu Mu's double sword attack, Feng Wui didn't have any intention of dodging. Instead, he fought back with the intention of perishing together. Chu Mu naturally wouldn't exchange his life for Feng Wui's. His figure dodged under the green demonic sword light. The void was split open by the green sword light, and a pitch-black crack appeared. Judging from this sword strike, Feng Wui had already reached an astonishing level in terms of pure strength. 1 against 10 with brute strength. No matter how ever-changing one's techniques were, it would be difficult to be effective against an overly powerful opponent. However, regardless of strength or technique, they were all relative. The battle between the two had just begun, and it was too early to say who would win and who would lose. As Chu Mu and Feng Wui battled, the 12 heavenly demons also battled the 12 Bright Sun Sword Saints of the Bright Sun Alliance. The 12 heavenly demons didn't look like humans after their demon transformation. Instead, they looked like demons. Their weapons were incomparably sharp claws that could easily tear space apart. After losing the opportunity to ambush, they could only fight head-on. Bright Sun Sword Saints against Bright Sun Sword Saints. In a situation where the difference in strength wasn't too great, it wasn't that easy to kill the other party. Fortunately, this wasn't one of the 5 great cities, but the Sword Demon Sect's headquarters. Therefore, they didn't have to hold back at all. They displayed their sword arts to their heart's content and attacked to their heart's content. They didn't care about causing destruction to the surroundings. The strength of a bright young sword saint was extremely tyrannical and terrifying. Every strike of his was extremely destructive, capable of easily severing mountains, splitting rivers and seas. The earth cracked and buildings collapsed in all directions. It was a ghastly sight. The disciples of the Sword Demon Sect who couldn't dodge in time were all killed and turned into ashes. The experts of the Bright Sun Alliance didn't hold back, and the 12 heavenly demons of the Sword Demon Sect didn't hold back either. Once they held back, it could mean death. As for the destruction of the Sword Demon Sect's headquarters and the deaths of the Sword Demon Sect's disciples, it didn't matter to them as long as Sword Demon Feng Wui didn't die. In just the beginning of the battle, at least a few thousand disciples of the Sword Demon Sect had been killed. Jia, the strength of Sword Star is only SOSO. One of the heavenly demons laughed strangely as he attacked with his claws. Claw shadows covered the sky and covered the surroundings. It was as if they had turned into a sky surrounding Feng Fascia. Astonishing killing intent shuttled back and forth, drifting unpredictably as it attacked Feng Fascia. Feng Fascia brandished his sword light, but the blade couldn't be seen. Only incomparably sharp sword light pierced through the void and clashed with the claw shadows. Facing his opponent's ridicule and provocation, Feng Fascia didn't say a word and replied with the sword in his hand. The strength of the 12 heavenly demons wasn't too different. Under their demon transformation, they had reached the level of Bright Sun Sword Saint. Therefore, when facing Long Huan and the other 4 veteran Bright Sun Sword Saints, they weren't as relaxed as when facing the 6 stars. They were at a slight disadvantage and were slightly suppressed, but they were still able to resist. Their duty wasn't to kill the opponent, but to delay the opponent and let the Demon Lord kill the opponent. At that time, no one would be able to escape. The 12 experts of the Bright Sun Alliance also understood that the battle between Chu Mu and Feng Wui was the decisive battle. Their role was to delay the 12 heavenly demons and prevent them from interfering, creating a better battle environment for Chu Mu. However, it would be best if they could kill the opponent. Blood-red sword light, silver sword light, golden sword light. The sword light was incomparably sharp, tyrannical, and sharp. In the blink of an eye, Chu Mu and Feng Wui had exchanged thousands of moves. The sword light that couldn't be formed surrounded them. That astonishing power was something that even the 6-star experts couldn't get close to. When the two swords collided, Chu Mu immediately felt a strange power rush through the sword into his arm. It was blocked by his sword origin, but there was another power that his sword origin and saint body couldn't resist. It was heading straight for his primordial spirit. Mobilizing his primordial spirit, the bronze primordial spirit shone brightly. Under the rotation of the 7-colored ring, the strange power that shot towards his primordial spirit was instantly defeated. Long Huan of the dragon-slaying manner had fought with Feng Wui before and was injured by him. Therefore, he knew that Feng Wui's attacks had the characteristic of attacking the primordial spirit. It was that strange power that he had already told Chu Mu. Time and time again, the improvement of his origin power cultivation and the breakthrough of saint body cultivation passively led to the improvement of Chu Mu's primordial spirit from the intermediate level 4 to the peak level 4. Because Chu Mu's soul was stronger, his peak level 4 primordial spirit was even more powerful. With the help of the primordial spirit's secret treasure, it was comparable to or even better than an ordinary early level 5 primordial spirit. An early level 5 primordial spirit wasn't considered high for someone with Chu Mu's strength. It could even be considered very low. But there was no other way. The cultivation of the primordial spirit was more difficult than the cultivation of the saint body Tao. It was too difficult to raise the primordial spirit without any supplementary treasures. It required too much time and energy. Moreover, the bright moon hovering sky secret technique that Chu Mu cultivated had the best cultivation environment under a bright moon. In the land of exile, there was no bright moon. Moreover, in the land of exile, only the Green Demon Mansion had a deeper understanding of the primordial spirit path. The other primordial spirit cultivation paths were very shallow. But even the Green Demon Mansion's primordial spirit cultivation path couldn't be compared to the Deep Blue World. The primordial spirit cultivation path was very difficult to begin with. Cultivation methods were also very rare, and talented cultivators were even rarer. Because the cultivators in the land of exile had to fight against the ferocious and powerful sinners, they needed to raise their strength as quickly as possible. The primordial spirit cultivation path was the most suitable. Moreover, sinners didn't have the so-called primordial spirit. Therefore, no matter how powerful the primordial spirit cultivation path was, it couldn't cause much harm to sinners. Various reasons led to the primordial spirit cultivation path being difficult to flourish in the land of exile. The primordial spirit cultivation path in the Green Demon Mansion was only a supplementary method. Because of this, Chu Mu was able to withstand Sword Demon Feng Wui's attack with his primordial spirit defense secret technique that was comparable to an early level 5 primordial spirit. This was also because Feng Wui's primordial spirit attack wasn't pure enough. It was only a supplementary attack. Looks like your primordial spirit is very powerful. It must be very delicious. Feng Wui's attacks didn't affect Chu Mu's primordial spirit at all. He immediately knew that Chu Mu's primordial spirit was very powerful. It wasn't something his attacks could shake. The stronger the primordial spirit, the more power it contained. After devouring it, the benefits would also be greater. Feng Wui was now at a limit. If he wanted to break through this limit, he would need a huge amount of power. Other than a huge amount of power, he also needed a sufficient amount of quality. Therefore, the stronger the primordial spirit, the greater the benefits it would bring him. The sword technique that Feng Wui was using was the Thunder Hibernation sword technique. However, there was an obvious difference between the Thunder Hibernation sword technique now and the Thunder Hibernation sword technique in the past. The speed of the sword was faster and the explosive power was more powerful. Under the same amount of power, the destructive power was at least several times higher. Heart sword as one. Everything within a radius of 10 meters was under the control of Chu Mu. No matter how fast Feng Wui's sword was, it couldn't escape from the grasp of Chu Mu's heart sword. Dodging, defending, and counterattacking, the sword was where the heart was. The two swords seemed to be everywhere. They could attack at any time. In terms of sword technique, Feng Wui was inferior to Chu Mu. Under the heart sword as one, the two swords hit Feng Wui's body from the front and back. However, they were blocked by the armor on his body. It was difficult to break through. Moreover, a strong rebounding force burst out from sword demon Feng Wui's armor. It bounced off Chu Mu's two swords and followed the two swords to attack Chu Mu's arms. The muscles on his arms trembled slightly, immediately dispersing the rebounding force. Borrowing the remaining force, the two swords attacked at an even faster speed, piercing towards Feng Wui's eyes. The sword light was reflected in Feng Wui's eyes and filled the entire world.